All right. 3, 2, 1. Oh, and they're off. Yeah. So, podcast number 270.
Wow.
Ooh. Boy, if you don't feel good about that, you probably
I just feel
should.
old.
I know, right? 270 podcasts, and we're still doing it.
John was just a small little boy when he started.
A wee lad.
It's just a wee lad. The back when we were recording them on reel to reel, yes, exactly, and everybody could listen to their podcast one at a time. You just mailed it to your friends. Yeah, that was the game.
We had him pressed on vinyl.
Yes.
Actually, that might be a thing to get hipsters involved into this. If we made special edition, limited edition vinyl.
on picture discs.
Picture disc.
Well, we can also do it on
Just a
wax.
butthole spinning around.
I think we put
We can do
Cameron
it
in
on
charge of
Wax
that.
cylinders. That's
Yeah.
recyclable too.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
environmentally friendly.
And that's 78 RPMs, right?
Yeah,
so.
yes.
Yeah.
So the whole disc, whole discs last like 6 minutes.
6 minutes, yeah.
That's it. It's a really funny thing. I picked up a little Subaru. So you guys saw this little Subaru Sandbar, and it's 660 cc's of supercharged power. But what's funny is the head unit in there is the Japanese they're great because their head unit has cassette and it has CD, but no aux input, right? So because aux input didn't exist in 1995.
You don't need to add anything.
And I did put an MP3 disc in it. So I just got, when it was popular in the early 90s, I would burn 1,000 songs, 1,000 MP3s onto a CD, a burnable CD. And then you chuck that in whatever it is you're driving so you don't have to change discs every hour.
8 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I put it in, and watching this head unit, which probably was one of the first head units that could decipher an MP3, watch it try to chew and figure out an MP3. And then when it did lock in on it, if you hit a micro bump, it'd lose it forever.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. So it didn't have the durability of finding that WAV file, that big dirty WAV
I
file.
remember that, though, when CD players first came out.
Yeah.
Like, if you hit anything, they would skip, and that was
Oh,
it.
yeah.
It was horrible.
I did lay down big money for a sergeant in the Army at the time. They had a car discman, and a car discman had all kinds of extra shock absorption built into it. So you could hit bumps and stuff, and it wouldn't skip. Consequently, though, it was thick as a book and heavier than fuck. And so you just feed AA batteries into this thing. So by the time you got done feeding AA's into it, it'd be time for more AA's.
Yeah, I had a Discman sitting up on my dashboard
Yeah.
on a piece of foam.
Yeah.
And I was like, it might not skip. I still have one.
Yeah, I've got mine kicking around.
Yeah, it took
so.
a couple years before they got the delay built in where it would, like, read the data and, go back
You mean
whatever.
16 times oversampling?
Exactly.
Yeah, that was it.
I had an FM converter with a 8-track.
Right. So what is this? Well, you slide it into your 8-track, and then what do? You drop your cassette into the top of it. So my 68 Lincoln, it had an AM with an 8-track and 8 speakers. That was 1968 technology,
Nice.
but I bought that tape adapter that fed into the 8-track, and you could put cassettes on it, and they would just sit on the top. It was good because you could see the guts moving and everything. It was pretty cool, but yeah.
My daddy said, son.
You're going to drive me to drinking if you don't stop driving that hot rod Lincoln. One of the best songs ever written.
Commander
So,
Cody.
Commander Cody and Lost Planet Airman,
Lost
man.
Planet
Those
Airman.
guys
He
were
played in New York at a. He's very ill, or he was very ill last summer, and he's got cancer or something.
really no more
And-
20 Flight Rock for that guy.
And he played at this big concert in the fall.
Yeah.
On right on Lake George, and I wanted to go to the concert, but I ended up having to work. So,
Damn it. See?
That's a shit.
but he was the headliner for that.
But he was
He was
the
the headliner for that show.
To my left is get to know your microphone, Chris. Chris, pull your microphone a little closer to your face hole. Yeah, that's why you get these cool arms.
Hi.
Oh, well, it's all right.
He broke
He
everything.
blew a spring. There's a spring drive micro. Don't worry about it. We'll fuck with that later. To my left is the honorable brother, Chris Smith.
Chris Alcaran.
Alcaran Smith. And so when he showed up wearing the fez to the podcast today, I've got one of the old Tiki Bob Merv bowling tiki mugs that I happen to have 2 of them just by luck. So I was like, "You need to own this." Yeah. So he's got the official bowling edition of the Tiki Farm mugs.
See, but the thing is,
Kick
it
ass.
would not surprise me if he
Yeah.
was in some secret society.
Right,
Right. That would just be like, oh, okay, Chris is in that.
I tested him with the secret handshake when I first met him.
Oh,
So,
okay,
yeah.
he knew.
Yeah, and I said, "Woo!"
He went, whoa, whoa, whoa! I barely know you, man. And to his left,
Dan Kromke,
yay! What did you bring, Dan?
Dickel Rye, and West Cork Barrel Strength.
Well, we are definitely going to be drinking
Irish
some
whiskey.
rye today, aren't we? So there we go.
Don't rye about it.
I'm not going to rye about it. No. And
Johnny Mac.
what did you bring?
I brought some of Cinch's Bloody Mary because I'm trying to go gluten free.
Oh,
I've had too much gluten in the form of beer in
Yeah.
the last couple of days.
Yeah.
And it might have something to do with my farts, I'm thinking.
that could be it, right?
So
Yeah.
I'm trying a little different fuel.
A little extra gluten. Yeah. A little afterburner action there on the back door.
He needs the reburner.
He does.
Afterburner.
Yeah.
Something.
That's it. And to his left,
Steve Hoffert.
very good to see you tonight, sir.
I brought
And
nothing.
Steve's sleeping.
running the boards.
And we're having, this is a salad drink.
Yes.
Because you get all your vitamins and minerals and all that kind of thing in it.
Is it V8?
Well, sort of.
Mrs. T's.
Mrs.
Mr.
T.
and Mrs. T's.
Is it Mr. and Mrs. T's? I'm not familiar
Mr.
with the
and
blend.
Mrs. T.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, Mr. and Mrs. T's. And then to his left, your humble narrator, our podcast viewers will appreciate a new camera angle.
Alrighty.
So you can see all of our smiling faces. And you can also see the monitor, which a lot of people are asking about. Like, we don't know what you're looking at.
Right.
Well, now you know what we're looking at. So you can have that. People were sniping on our previous podcast on the YouTube saying that they were looking at my computer to try and see what I was looking at.
Oh, they were zooming in.
Well, because we were playing the video of me riding the bikes in California and stuff,
Right.
and they couldn't see it, so they were a little left out. But here's the tip. If you're watching one of last week's video on the YouTube, go to Cleveland Moto channel, and I have all those videos are all posted on the Cleveland Moto YouTube channel, so you can watch them like you were there. In
For your
fact,
viewing pleasure.
yeah, like you were in the helmet with me, as
There
they
you go.
say. The
Helmut.
Helmut, indeed. So, a couple of things that are in the news for us in Cleveland. Lordstown is not far from here. And this Lordstown factory, when Chevy pulled, what was it, the Cobalt? Mm-hmm. So when they pulled the
No,
Cobalt.
the Cruise. Chevy
Yeah.
Cruise.
Yeah.
So when they were building those, or they stopped building those, this really big factory became a fucking ghost town, man.
And the factory goes back to 1975 or
Really?
76. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's and it's a big piece of property. It is gigantic.
Yeah.
It's on a couple
And it was
hundred
state
acres.
of the art back then.
So for that thing to be sitting vacant is a
Yeah.
fucking shame,
I know,
right?
yeah.
It's like a mile long.
It's
It
big.
also-
It's
it
huge.
said they're also going to expand another 126 acres.
That's what I
Yes,
thought was
you're
super
right.
cool about it. So the news story is, it all went through this week, and LG Chem, which is a company that makes batteries, and General Motors have announced an agreement, and they're going to build a 30 gigawatt battery factory. And this is a big deal for us.
So this is a big deal. This is very cool.
Yeah, because as we know, moving forward, the future of vehicles is going to be electric. At least a giant portion of it is. And Elon Musk has been building gigafactories. So they've got the gigafactory in New York. They've got a gigafactory in Nevada. And this is going to give us that same kind of output, but it's going to give it to us here in Ohio, where we desperately need it after losing so much of our manufacturing base.
1,100 jobs.
Yeah, 1,100 jobs. So the Lordstown factory had originally employed 3,300 workers. So getting a third of that back doesn't seem like much, but
No, it does.
it's a fucking
Yeah.
start, man.
Yeah.
Oh, you should go
absolutely.
buy up all those mobile homes right there in that park right across from the factory.
That's a great idea, man.
Oh, my God.
that is a
Make a
really
killing.
good idea. Yeah, long-term Airbnb those things for the staff they're going to bring in to build these. They're planning on achieving what's called $100 per kilowatt hour.
That's the most exciting thing about
It really is. That's a big number. How does that number break down, Steve? So you talk about $100 per kilowatt.
If you look at it, I just figured this out for
Yeah.
the Zero batteries.
Right.
Okay, so my Zero has a 6.5 kilowatt hour battery,
Right.
and that costs roughly $5,500 to replace.
Correct. Yeah. There's
So if you're looking at 6.5 times $100, that's
$650 bucks.
compared to $5,500.
Yeah, that's like
So that's a
12% of
game
the cost.
changer right there. That's a game changer for.
Bringing the price of electric vehicles down.
And then if you look at their old, and the power, because those are LiPo batteries.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at a 6.5 kilowatt battery weighs about 90 pounds.
Okay. Yeah.
Their old cars had a 26 kilowatt battery, and that weighed 1,200 pounds.
Holy shit.
So can you imagine the range you're going to be able to get if you're only paying, for the same cost
Right.
and for the same weight, you're going to be able to triple the range easily of that car.
Yeah. And getting the cost per kilowatt hour down, when we look at the new Zeros that we have in the room with us, their big battery system now is 14.4 kilowatt hours. So if you could get that battery cost where in the world of Zero, we talk about these, everything now with Zero is all running on a 3.2 kilowatt battery block. It's like the size of a toaster. It weighs 40 pounds and it's 3.2 kilowatts. And those things are $2,600 a piece and up, right? So if you took that 3.2 and you dropped that from $2,600 down to $320, now that's production cost. That's not going to be the retail to the consumer. But just the same, that's a massive change, and that's going to bring the price of these electric vehicles down pretty fast.
But if it's double, that makes your electric bike very attractive to purchase because
Yeah.
you think about buying one of these bikes and just say that the battery burns, like you have a 5-year warranty on the battery.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It won't fail after 5 years.
No, not at all.
But say it did fail after 5 years.
Right.
Somebody's going to say, well, why would I spend another, those batteries right there, like that 14.4 battery is probably $10,000.
It's a substantial piece of the price of the motorcycle.
So
Right.
somebody's got to be thinking, well, is this bike a one-time, I buy it, by the time the battery dies, it's a throwaway because the battery pack's going to cost me half the cost of a new bike, so
That's
I might as
right.
well buy another bike and get the new technology.
Exactly
or
right.
if the price comes down to, say, replacing that battery pack for $1,000 or $2,000 versus $10,000, then you say in 10 years, there's going to be a very large used market for electric bikes because you could just replenish the battery.
It sounds like the best deal in the world.
Right. And they're not brushless, and the motors are brushless.
They'll last forever.
And the controllers should last for a certain number of hours, but they'll be replaceable. I mean, that's not a big expense.
It's not the most expensive part of the bike by a long shot.
And do they have? So you know the bikes well, and so do you. Are the cavities like? Could they put other batteries in?
There's no reason why you couldn't take any case in the world
Right.
and reproduce that case to carry any kind of a battery that comes out.
Okay.
What I found was interesting. There's a chart that we're going to throw into the show notes as well. But if you take a look at the production of Tesla, where right now this chart, the dark red line, the orange line is the future. The orange line is what they're predicting by 2028. Don't even fucking pay attention to that because that's just vaporware. That's a wish. But the dark part, the very bottom of the line, you'll see that Tesla right now is leading the world. So LG China, big surprise. LG China and Tesla are very similar to their power output, their battery output right now. And right behind them is Samsung. And then if you look at Panasonic, they're right in that hunt too. And there's a company called CATL that also does a lot in the way of batteries. And so you look at who the world players are. If this LG Chem and General Motors together, they're going to be up there. And that's what really excites me because being here in Ohio and having that resource, we're going to be able to have American-made motorcycles with American-made batteries in them. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be really significantly important for us because that means less of our money in the purchase price of this bike is going out of the country.
Well, it's going to make some weird bedfellows, too, because
Yes, it
you
is.
think if they're having a 30 gigawatt factory, then they're going to be selling to Ford and
Well, that's what I was just going to say. I mean, GM is notorious for. I mean, GM motors at gasoline engines have been put in Saabs and this
Everything.
and that.
Volvos,
So if
the
they're
whole
making
deal.
these batteries,
Yeah.
they're going to sell them to everybody they can.
And in the 52 and 53 Lincoln had a GM transmission in it.
Exactly. So it's great. It's a great thing to think that we're going to have that kind of a manufacturing resource in Ohio.
The other thing that the CEO of General Motors said, which I thought was interesting, is that we understand that global warming is here. It's going to continue. And we are going to position ourselves to correct for global warming, which is a huge statement
Yeah,
in
that
this
is.
day and age. With there's a lot of global warming deniers in a lot of powerful places. And being the CEO of General Motors Corporation still is a big deal. It's not what it was 30, 50 100 years ago.
Right.
But it's still significant, and for her to come out and say that,
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're also playing to the market too.
Good.
You're playing to the millennial market, and
Good.
you know,
Whatever it
whether
takes
or
to get
not
them to buy the car.
You believe it or you don't believe
Yeah.
it. You're going to say that because that's your emerging market. Your emerging market.
Here's an interesting thing.
or on the other hand, she does believe it.
Right. So you look at
I'm not saying that she doesn't believe it.
Right.
I'm just saying that it's either way. It's a move that's going to position
Ingratiate
GM to sell
yourself to the
better.
next.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Here's a question for you. Here's a bonus question. General Motors right now, they do produce a certain number of electric vehicles. All their batteries right now come from a plant in Michigan called the Brownstone Battery Manufacturing Facility. We've just told you that the Lordstown plant is going to initially employ 1,100 people. How many people do you think currently work in battery production for General Motors in their facility at Brownstone Battery?
35.
Yeah, it's 60.
Okay.
So it's 60 people full-time. I'm sorry, 60 people total, 35 or 37 full-time, and the rest are part-timers.
Woof.
What a massive expansion to go from 60 people to 1,100.
1,100, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
really, how much of a battery is not automated?
Well, that's another good, yeah. You'd think that automation is a major part of that.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, you got it. But then I'm thinking, so where are all the raw materials coming from? You know what I mean? Like, there's going to be trucking, shipping, logistics in and out of that. It's
Oh,
just
yeah,
going to be moving metal, moving
The
things.
footprint
stocking.
of jobs that are going to support that factory are going to be
Produce
pretty
enough
impressive.
lithium to actually even produce that kind of battery.
I think there is.
I mean,
We just need to make better friends with Pakistan and, all the stands, because that seems to be where a lot of it's hiding right now.
because like phosphorus is
Stevestan?
running.
Stevestan? Yeah.
They're saying that phosphorus is going to run out.
I honestly don't doubt that we could run this planet out of any damn thing we wanted to. It just, as we looked at things that were deemed to be precious metals many, many, many years ago, and we hung everything on the production of certain things, and now those things don't have much value at all. We've stepped away from.
The Earth's crust is about how many miles thick? So
Yeah,
somewhere in this planet, it's there. They just have to find it. So there's
And if it gets us
it's
through
just
to the
like with
next-
oil. There's the low hanging fruit. There's the
Right.
stuff. It's bubbling out of the ground. Great. That's the first place we're going to get it.
Exactly.
But as it gets more expensive, then it becomes more profitable
And
to find
everyone
it on other places.
does talk about things like silica batteries, and they talk about solid state batteries. But the interesting thing is, despite all that discussion of those technologies, the people who have the most money at stake in battery technology are tripling down on lithium. So it's nice that I think they're looking towards a solid state battery, they're looking towards a silica battery or alternative technologies. But that is not slowing them down one bit from investing in infrastructure in lithium.
But don't they always say that, like, whatever we have now,
Yep.
the government or some military agency has something 50 years ahead of what we're getting now?
Maybe.
So what do you think the battery, like...
You've been in the military.
I have, and
Were you
what we
50
had was
years
not
ahead of the
50 years
rest?
ahead of everybody else. Excuse me. But yeah, sorry, it's just the coronavirus.
I'm wondering like what they actually have that we haven't heard about yet that's powering some of the things that we don't get to see.
You know what everyone talked about? Well, the Mars rover or, different things that they're well-performing beyond what their original design was. They planned for something to last 2 years, and they're still getting data back from it 12 years later.
Right.
So, yeah, obviously, that's the extremely high-hanging fruit, the rare air shit that costs, $20 million an ounce. That stuff's reserved for the space program. Right. It's not going to It's not going to make its way into your kidneys for a long
but I'm
time.
saying, but what they learned from all that
Yeah.
definitely trickles down, and we get some remnants of it.
Hell
in something.
yes.
So
So that's great for us.
We get calculators.
We could, if we're lucky. The
on your phone.
would you be interested? I know we talked last week because Cameron was here. We spoke a lot about Harley Davidsons, which happens anytime Cameron's around. But apparently, I have to give a gold star of knocking one out of the park for Indian, because Indian launched this week their new emphasis on more affordable Scout Bobber 60. And why I think this is kind of cool is I've ridden them, and I think the Scout is a cool bike. It for some reason, everybody that's walking away from Harley Davidson is walking into Indian. Everybody I've talked to ever is like, oh yeah, I used to have a Harley, but now I've got an Indian. Well, and that's a big popular statement. It's still an American bike, and they're happier with the performance and stuff like that.
And it's black.
This one is black because black is cheaper. It does turn out that the brand new Indian Scout 60, that's a 1,000cc bike, and that's a 1,000cc bike with no shortage of awesome technology in it.
It looks good.
It does look nice.
Yeah.
It looks really good. And
Are you getting one for us there, Uncle?
No,
Phil?
no, not until they're crashed, used, or far less valuable. And not even that this one's a problem, but this is coming in at $89.99.
Wow.
So yeah, $9,000.
But
So
let's
go
talk
against
about
an
this.
83 Sportster, right?
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
on their website, which you posted
Yeah, I
today,
did.
so I went and
Yeah.
looked at it.
Yeah.
Said configure your bike, and I said, "Ooh, okay."
Configurator.
So I was playing with the configurator, and I added saddlebags, and I added a pipe.
Oh, no, you changed
and I
paint
added
color.
a couple of
That
paint
cost you.
color,
Yeah.
and a few things, and mine came out to $17,940.
Yeah.
So $9,000 is relevant if you're willing to take what you see.
The $89.99 Scout, the Scout 60, is only available at that price point in that color of invisible to other drivers black. It's black, black, black. The only thing that isn't black would be the brake rotors because they couldn't be black. And I think if they could figure out a way to make those black, they would have made those discs black. But it is kind of interesting. I mean, 999cc, 78 horsepower.
That's pretty damn good.
And a price tag of under 10 grand. That's kind of what America's asking for. And it's a liquid cooled modern motor. So
And obviously nobody sat on one yet, but the Egros look decent.
they do.
They don't
yeah,
look
yeah,
like
yeah.
they're
Still
gonna be
forward.
Yeah, it looks like a forward control. It's a standard forward control configuration. And the one I rode last year, it's not unlike that. I mean, that's pretty much the same thing as all the Scouts. And it did ride nice. It rode fine.
Is that a long reach from that saddle up to those?
It is. It
bars?
is. Merritt rode it, and Merritt's 5'4" on her license, 5'2" in real life, and she was able to ride the bike around. She enjoyed it. She dug it. She's in that we call it the flying toe touch position.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be all things to all people, but I'm just happy that they did it. It's badass. Interesting thing about their marketing. Why I think that Cameron last week was talking about Harley Davidson placing their clip art onto a site where graphic artists go to find clip art for free. And so that if you type, motorcycle into this clip art engine and get this non-licensed art that people can use for different things, that Harley Davidson had made sure to populate like the first 3 positions were Harley Davidson motorcycles.
That's pretty good, man.
It's not a dumb thing, right? And so
But some people scoffed at it.
Indian fired back. If you look at the front page of Indian's website for the Scout 60, oh my. If that's, I think I know these people. I'm fairly certain I know these people. But look at that. That sheet is, hot lady rider putting on her helmet and her exposed sleeves of many tattoos. And the dude's got his brown leather jacket on. He's got the brown saddle on his Indian Scout 60 with the chrome finish engine. And she's got her blacked out bike. And that definitely, to me, appeals. I think that appeals to a younger rider than a lot of other marketing I've seen.
They're in front of Culinary Dropout.
Yes,
the cool restaurant.
I'm so glad you said that because you know what? It's culinary, but it's also dropout. So it's ironic. It's like you go to eat really, really good food, but they serve it to you on like thrift store plates.
No, this guy,
Yeah.
he took it to the next level. He's like, you can do all this fancy stuff, but we're
Right.
going to remake PB&J.
Yes. Yeah, they're going to reimagine.
It's a reimagine.
Right.
It's a deconstructed PB&J.
They bring you a piece of bread, they bring you some jelly and butter, and you get to put it together yourself.
Yes.
It's a deconstructed PB&J.
With artesian bread, though.
Fuck them. And do you know? And that's
Artisanal.
well. And
Artisanal,
again,
sorry.
they don't hire chefs; they hire
Dropouts.
dropout chefs because they want nonconformists. Yeah. Pittsburgh, Culinary Institute of Art? No, not here, sir.
Yeah.
We only want Culinary Institute of Art dropouts.
Dropouts.
Army cooks.
Right, Army slob.
Yeah.
Serve everything.
Prison cook.
Prison cooks. Yeah. You're hired. Come on in.
We have that in town.
Yeah, well, and the good news is they come pre-tattooed. So, yeah.
But the bikes look nice.
The bikes do look great.
I'll give them that.
Yeah.
They got the longer fenders up front, which aren't as ensconced as you would hope. But
Well, it does keep the grit and grime and shit off the rad. There's something to be said about fenders that actually fend.
yeah.
I
And
like the parallel exhaust.
I do too.
like
the shotgun style exhaust.
But I mean, I like the parallel down pipes.
Oh yeah, yeah. I agree.
But hold
I
on.
think it's the angle is
They
nice.
hold the same
Yeah.
angle, so
If
the
They
front
should
down
twist
pipe.
over.
If you
the one should
notice,
go
though-
they're on the wrong thing though. The top one should go underneath the other one, so that your two blanks are the right length.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
All right, but here's the thing. This is the
Got
important
that.
thing. If you notice these bikes,
Yeah.
that's not what you get for $9,000.
No.
You see the small
Yeah.
fonts? Because I built that bike and it was 17
Yeah.
with bags on it though.
Yeah, and he's not joking. If you do literally have to go in, and Thunder Black is the only way you can buy it at that price point. The second you go even to Thunder Black with ABS, you are now knocking the ball out of the park on the price point. Yeah, it really is. It's so true. And that's the as configured. You get $89.99. I'm going to go over here and let's just say, for the sake of argument, we just want to make it sexy. We're going to make it pearl white and titanium. And instantly 10.7.
Yep.
So that
But that's
one
still
thing,
not bad.
yeah, but
That's
it's
not bad.
That's
Come
an
on.
Add a few
18
accessories, dude.
That's an $1,800 upgrade for just the paint. So to
But it's
see that
two-tone too.
it is two-tone. It is two-tone. But you look at that bike. There's the difference between black and $1,800 more.
What's burgundy? I mean, what's just a flat? I mean, a
Well,
single
burgundy
color.
paint. Let's find out. So it's 10.2. So you're adding
10.3.
$1,400. Yeah. So you're adding $1,400 to the purchase
That's
price
worth
or
it.
whatever. It could be. Yeah, it is. I mean, I know what it costs to get a
Steve's
motorcycle
got more
shot.
money than God. What the
Yeah,
hell?
yeah, we know what it costs to
Not
get a
this,
motorcycle
Steve.
shot. It's pretty expensive. Yeah, go ahead, Daniel.
Well, I don't know how much you would actually save, but S&S is making aftermarket parts
Sure.
for Indian now.
Right, and that's a hell of a thing, and that tells you a lot about who's buying them.
I think for $1,400,
Yeah,
I'd buy it in the black, and I'd take my tins to some guy, and I'd have him do it up whatever I wanted.
whatever I wanted. Yeah, I
$1,400
agree.
would get you your tins painted.
And now
up.
everybody's doing dips and different
Especially
coatings too.
brand new, where there's no, he doesn't have to fill anything or do anything. Sand it down and paint it.
That's true.
Or buy wrecked ones and have them.
I think they could have just shown you a real bike and not a CGI of the.
That is the flavor of the week, and to do that, to do everything in CGI, but that gives you the ability to rotate the bike around.
Yeah, but you can do that with pictures. They could have done that
I know.
with pictures.
I agree.
So-
Well, again, I'm not a web designer, and I don't pretend to be one on the internet.
Goofy. I mean,
Yeah.
with the picture like
Yeah,
that.
it's a silly thing, and it all harkens
is a
back to
cool
like
looking
those
bike,
games
though.
where you'd design your own motorcycle and go race it. A video
Well, that's
game.
what they
kind of
sold
thing.
that to GT6 or Grand Theft
Grand
Auto
Theft.
6. So that's going to be in the video game.
That's how they put it together.
Yeah.
So give them credit
I
for
like
that.
the bus.
And what are they doing too? Is this isn't the dealership. This means nothing, right? But this gives you the ability from the comfort of your toilet to embark upon the journey of owning and customizing a motorcycle.
And then wiping yourself.
Well, but it's what we used to do with the J.C. Whitney catalog.
Yeah.
So we would sit there with our 66 Beetle, and we'd sit on the toilet with the J.C. Whitney catalog, and we'd fold pages over for
Baja Bug.
yeah, I'm going to build the Baja Bug one page at a time.
We just got a bidet,
Dual
by the
port.
way.
I want dual port heads.
Now you're living a good life, aren't you?
Yeah.
Heated
you must
water, or
have
regular
women
water?
in your house.
Regular water,
Old.
cold water. Yeah, you got to have a hot water bidet, man.
That's uncivilized, dude.
I'm gonna have to upgrade at some point. This was just dipping my toe in the water, my bum in the water.
Oh, yeah, exactly. But it is a level of cleanliness that's hard to match.
Does it have enough force that if you miss, if it hits the ceiling?
Oh, it's got force.
It's got plenty of
It's a-
pressure.
Okay, so our toilet is right
Yeah.
across from the shower.
Oh, yeah.
Luckily, I had the shower curtain on the first time I hit it,
Yeah.
and it is a laser from the toilet straight to the back of the shower wall. It's just. I'm like, whoa, fuck!
How does it know where your pucker is?
You kind of it's.
Mine's got a button you can aim it.
Okay.
So
no
mine,
shit.
yeah.
You have a
Does
joystick.
it have a joystick and a camera so you can hone in on it and hit the fire button?
No, you believe me. Let me tell you what. When you've got 18 psi of water shooting at your brown note, there is no doubt you know where the target acquisition is, and then you just reach down and there's a little button that tells you forward and backwards. It doesn't give you left or right. It's just elevation.
So it's a claw game.
It is, and you can sit there and you can be like, nope. Yep. And you can work a little back and forth, and it has the oscillation action.
Well, at that point, you need to have Pornhub too. 'Cause, well, you
Honey,
know.
are you still in the bathroom?
So if you leave,
not that
if you
way.
leave it out too
Mine's not
long,
that-
does it come out
mine
of your
is-
nose?
Yeah. Yeah, but
Mine
if you
is-
get really relaxed, you can get a true deep cleaning.
Oh,
So-
Oh, my prostate.
I haven't been able to go full throttle with mine, and I'm sure if you went full throttle, you'd get a fucking deep cleaning. Because even at low, it's like Peggy was like, it kind of hurts. I'm like, yeah, it does kinda hurt.
You tell her, oh, just the first
I
time.
still love you, honey.
You'll get used to it. Trust me.
Yes.
Anyone here ever used a toilet in Japan?
No?
A squatty potty.
Toilets in Japan are the most amazing thing because there's a little electronic control panel on the side of each one because it has a bidet.
Yeah.
It has a heated seat.
That's the one I own.
I mean, I don't know. I think I never figured out what all the buttons did. I think one of them vibrates, and there's like a sink built into the back of the toilet. So when you wash your hands, that water goes into the tank to flush the toilet.
Oh,
yeah.
jeez.
It's just, it's unbelievable.
See, we thought Phil was just buying key cars. He's also on these other websites buying 1995 Japanese toilets that he brings in. He can finally.
He's got a long waiting list also.
I'm gonna assure you right now that we got this one as this one was basically a gift. But a friend of mine who's the head mechanic at Motorsport Scooters in San Diego, Robot had one, and when I experienced the one at Robot's house, as soon as I left Robot's house, I was like, I know what I need to buy. And once you fully embrace a heated water, heated seat, so mine's heated water, heated seat, and I got friends in Chicago. My buddy Derek, he bought one that has a hand remote. So it's a cordless
The hand
interaction.
comes right up?
The hand comes right out. It's got a little brush on it.
Over
and
at the
everything.
McElfresh house, ours was
When the toilet's so
1/10 of that
complicated.
price.
Yeah, so this one, there's Derek's. He's got the remote there, right? And but yeah, they're really easy to install. They take no time at all to install, and just plug it in where you plug in your.
I am thinking about tapping into the
Electric
hot
toothbrush.
water under the sink and
Yeah, you
then
could do that.
doing that.
Yeah. Or you could just buy one that has. Mine's got a little water tank on it
Oh,
that
shit.
heats it.
Oh my goodness.
In the back, so you don't even see it.
Because, dude, you don't want full 120
No,
degree
no,
water
no.
spraying up your pie hole.
And to tell you again to the level of opulence of the one that I'm using. So the one I have at the house is this guy down here. The to give you an idea of the opulence, it has a timer. That
Oh, wait a minute, that's
senses-
the Toto SW.
The Toto Super
20
Washlet 2033. Yeah, the C100. It's not the top of the range. As you can see, the controller is still hooked to the device. It's not a wireless controller. But what it does is it senses your use patterns and then only heats the water when you'll need it. It has the
What keeps talking?
Oh, it's just our little security cameras. So,
Oh, okay.
Yeah, don't worry. That's the security cameras are having trouble finding. I've got some extra security cameras for fun, and some pan and tilt ones, but they're just sometimes they have trouble finding the Wi-Fi.
Okay.
And then the little Japanese woman says, "Wi-Fi connected."
So your bidet has a smart hot water heater.
Yeah, it does, and so it'll determine your schedule. So it only heats the seat and heats the seat and it heats the water. You can heat the seat and the water at different temperatures, and you can, of course, there's 3 different targeting. So there's targeting for the vajayjay, there's targeting for the back door, and there's targeting for the back door at low pressure. And then each one of them has rotation or non-rotation. It's pretty fucking sweet living. I mean, I'm going to tell you guys, you don't knock it till you tried it. And you'll use about 1/3 as much toilet paper as you ever used. And it does.
That'll save you $8 a year.
It could. It might.
I've been doing one good wipe first. I'm like, let's knock the mud down with one good wipe.
You want to get rid of the solids.
Oh, well, I just don't want to be blasting
ask you this, though.
shit spray all over the
Will
place.
will it handle like a lipstick turd where like you have like it's just you wipe.
I did that the other day. I had a dangler.
Okay.
And I'm like, I've got a bidet. I've got a dangler.
You got the perfect answer.
And I was
So you
like,
have to stand up and move over?
Gave a little spritz. Whoop. Oh, there it goes.
So it's almost like a water jet where it'll just like hose off until
Oh.
it breaks it off and gets off of there.
Mine, if you turn it on full throttle, it's going to...
Mine, if you turn it on full throttle, it's going to cut your skin.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no doubt about it. We've never had it on full. We have one time had it on full. I got off that seat so fast.
You have a power limiter?
Well, no, that's the problem. Is it probably should, and I don't know what person of the Titanium Butthole Society could use this thing at full chat.
That's years of genetics.
Years of genetics. Yeah, my
So you're
shit snipper's
saying
not that tight.
You never need a turd knife now.
No,
You can
ever.
just cut it
Never,
right from-
ever.
Yeah, right.
No, it's like I have seen power washers from Harbor Freight that have less oomph than this thing does. But yeah, it's a real deal. It's the real
You
deal.
could cut metal with like an aqua laser. It's like,
Yeah. So Daniel, you could go back. You could have a virtual trip to Japan for the price of a Toto washlet. You know, and
Those are $8,000.
no, they're not. They're not that expensive. They're remarkably cost effective, and you can get them reboxed on Amazon for cheap.
Reebok.
Yeah. Oh,
might
yeah.
want to run it
Sent
through your,
back.
you might want to run it through your
Reebok.
dishwasher
What?
first.
There are a whole lot of people. I'm absolutely certain that there are a whole lot of people that went, wow, what a great gift idea. Hooked it up, used it once, and went out of my house now.
Yeah.
Because it took them to a place in their world that they're not willing to admit that
Mike
they live
Pence
in yet.
in Indiana.
Yeah.
I'm going to assure you there are people
does
that are
not have a bidet.
uncomfortable with the idea of a jet of warm, delightful water
He,
cleaning your undercarriage.
I'm not whatever, but he would need his wife to be with him using
Mm-hmm.
a bidet,
He
just so
would
they
have
could
to hold his hand.
Hold
Yes,
his hand.
hold his
Right,
hand to
right.
get through the experience.
Right.
Because it is. So tonight on Toilet Chat, the
You know, I thought I left work at like 3.
your job would be a lot easier if everyone had a bidet. Yeah.
Steve, don't you want to chime in on this?
I'm surprised he doesn't have one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably did a DIY thing with a power washer.
Yeah, right.
It's a,
Or a DUI.
a DUI. It could be a double DUI. So I was very interested today as I was fucking about on the internet to discover that Hertz, we all know Hertz, Howard Hertz. The Hertz is now renting motorcycles. And this is kind of cool. They're testing it in the American market. They've been doing it in Europe for a while now, and they're launching it in Las Vegas, and they're launching it in Riverside, California, and Long Beach. And it's not that expensive. So we talked about Austin and the guys from Twisted Road. We talked about Riders Share, and those are basically renting motorcycles from other people. And this, on the other hand, is renting motorcycles from a company that has a fleet of motorcycles. And so the numbers are pretty interesting. So if we said, for instance, just for the sake of fun, we're going to say that we're flying into Vegas tomorrow morning, because, you know, when you rent a car, sometimes getting a last-minute booking can be expensive. So let's say we're going to get off our airplane at 10:30 in the morning, and we're going to return the bike on Sunday. We're just going to do a one-day rental, and then we're going to, let's see here, I'll choose that guy, and we're going to return it in the afternoon. All right. Oh, they're closed. That office is closed on Sunday. Oh, yes, we're going to have to return it on Monday. That could be a problem. All right, let's go. Let's see what the Price-O-Matic
Wait,
says.
don't forget to redeem your voucher.
Well, we're not going to even do the coupons, right? Okay, now they're going to give us a whole arsenal of motorcycles to choose. And I think that's freaking cool. So you can get everything from a BMW F700 to R1200 RTs, R1200 GSs. You can get the K1600B, the Baga. You can get the K1600 G America, the GA. And you can get R9T Scrambler.
Well, you know that this is available in Cleveland right now.
No.
So Sills Motorcycles, which
Oh,
you know
okay.
very well.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a thing called Eagle Rider.
Eagle Rider, yeah.
Okay,
Right.
so
Yeah, we're familiar with
they're
that.
you can get a BMW R1200 GS.
Okay, let's-
$169 a day.
$169 a day. Excellent. So let's see what Hertz is going to charge you. Okay, let's see what Hertz charges you. They are charging you. Oh, sorry, can't do that.
Just- they're-
Zero.
Yeah,
I like
zero.
that.
Zero.
$5, man. We got to go after that. I done it earlier. I don't know why it's. I don't know why it's happening to give me the zero price now.
Did it already rent them out? Maybe it's not available.
I don't know. It could very well be, but I did practice one earlier. But we're gonna pull up another one today on the podcast just for. the
and
heck
these
of it.
also go down, like they're substantially cheaper if you do a week.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's almost
That's
like
cool.
$30 a day less. to
Did
do
you rent a
week.
BMW from
did,
Sills?
yeah.
And so it's about $169 a day.
Yeah,
Pretty
somewhere
rad.
around there, yeah.
Pretty cool.
And you know, Sills, I think, is the only Eagle Rider BMW rental joint east of the Mississippi, and
think
they
you're
get
right.
people coming over
Yeah.
from all over Europe.
Oh,
Just
wow.
just crash into them saying we want to rent your BMWs because that's
Mm-hmm.
what the Europeans want, or the South Americans. So I went over there one time to rent a BMW last summer, and they said, "Oh well, we're completely booked for the whole summer."
Oh, you just wanted like to try it for a day or something?
Yeah, I was gonna ride out to this strip club, but they said no.
Just give it a go, right?
Yeah, so they do a nice little business
Yeah.
with the BMWs as opposed to the other Eagle Rider joints that do Harleys,
Right. Yeah.
which are there's tons of those. Anyhow, go ahead.
So there's the pricing for Hertz.
That's nice.
I
A little bit cheap.
checked,
$150 a day.
Yeah, I checked one that wasn't because my problem is I had literally entered in like we were renting the bike in 3 hours, so that just wasn't enough notice.
I like how they actually did reasonable. Like, look, 300
miles a day.
That's reasonable.
That's very reasonable.
Like, you got to be a pretty serious person to. Although, because of Mike picking up your old mad ass.
Yeah.
I did read that you guys did 515 miles in one day on a mad ass.
We'd made a mistake. So we had originally routed the trip that we were going to do 300 miles a day.
Right.
And we'd said that was going to be our target mileage. But then when we had changed our trip and decided we weren't going to go on the southern route across Texas.
Right, you're going to go
because
up
we were going to go over the top. That added quite a distance to our trip and also snow.
Yeah.
And some weather issues. And so it became more of a challenge because when we got to Grand Junction, Colorado, we got snowed in. And so we got snowed in, we had to make up for some lost time. And so the one day we did 400 and some odd miles.
Yeah, whatever.
And we did it in one day on a 125. So that day hurt. Yeah, that was a tough day. That was like 14 hours.
You and James?
Yeah, that was 14 hours in the saddle
So-
that day. So
Just a side note.
Tough day.
If you guys didn't hear about this, so remember Mike that came to the podcast a few times?
Yep.
Stuff like that. He's just really busy with work. He's going to come back eventually. But like, so he was sitting there and he's like, I got a free bike. I'm like, what'd you get? He's like, a mad ass. I said, interesting. Where'd you get it? And he named the guy, and it's 170cc now with a fuel injection system on it and all
Yeah.
this stuff, and it's twin pipes and all this stuff. And the guy gave it to him. And then shows the title. So I go, hey, Phil. And I sent the whole list. I said, hey, look, Mike got this bike. It's Phil's bike. It's
my
his
old bike. Yeah.
POC.
Yeah, for real. And that was our backup bike. So that wasn't our primary bike. That was the backup. So we had set the two bikes up basically the same, minor differences between the two. And when that guy came into our shop, he was pretty clear what he wanted. He'd had a 50cc Mattis already, and he was riding it in the winter. He put snow tires on it.
Woof.
God bless this guy. And so when he came in, I was like, well, I'll make you a screaming deal on a bike that's literally only been in the back of a minivan and deployed when we got to Vegas to go drinking, when we got to Denver to go drinking, anywhere we needed to go on our own
Right,
bikes.
that's yeah, right.
We deployed the emergency bike. And so it really didn't cover any miles at all. And then I rode it around a little bit in town, but that was the one. That one had a factory mad-ass motor in it. That one didn't have a Piranha in it. That one just had a regular motor in it. So, but that was our emergency bike.
Yeah,
That was
well,
our
now it
backup.
has 177
with a
cc.
fuel injector.
Yeah, but apparently you guys used up all the sparks because it's not sparking anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well,
he's working on that.
Yeah, well, it has a fuel injector,
Yeah,
so there's other things involved too.
Right.
So it's no longer just
Yeah.
it could be the coil.
Right. Yeah, no, it's not that.
Yeah.
But it's funny how small this place is that bike comes back into the fold.
It is
out of
really
nowhere.
weird, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very, very interesting thing that bike strangely enough, sometimes bikes come full circle.
Yeah.
And when you think about that was 2009, so it's 11 years later, that bike, which had disappeared, and then fell in the hands of somebody who loved it enough and was insane enough to put a fuel injector on it.
Right. And here's the caveat to the whole thing. The only reason I knew it had anything to do with you is because Mike, for some reason, sent me a picture of the title, too. Because, I wouldn't have known. It was just another mad ass, whatever. But he said the title, and right on the bottom was Pride of Cleveland, Pride of Cleveland Scooters, Phil Waters, the whole thing. I was like, holy shit, it's Phil's bike.
It's what we did. I mean, that was not even, not joking. We did... we had a lot of fun with that. That is the understatement of the century, is to say that we had a lot of fun with it. But yeah, that's if you look good, if you look long and hard enough on the internet, you can still see pictures of the doctor. We had a website called Dr. Madass.
Oh, I looked it up.
Yeah, and Dr. Madass was that was a thing. That was real.
The Wayback Machine still has three screen grabs of the website.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. You guys were delivering something to somebody at one point. And it's very
again, the whole thing is that was one of those adventures where we always say if there's a company that has a new product out there, one of the best ways they can prove their product isn't garbage is to find an idiot to drive it cross country.
Well, I think that's where the original article came from. Was the person that was distributing the bikes, whoever that was. he was like, this crazy guy that I've known for years, Phil and James, asked me to, they would do the ride if I gave them the bikes, and I said, hell yeah.
Yeah, I was out there. I was out there demoing the products in Atlanta, Georgia. I was riding. He's got those cool little Honda Dream 90 sport bikes with the so bad,
Dream
so
50
badass.
Rs
Dream 50Rs, yeah, Dream 50Rs, and I was riding those around, and we were just kind of having a good time. And he's a big guy, and I'm not a little guy. And Renee was with us, and we're just kind of farting around on these bikes. And I said, you know what you got to do? You got to have a media event. You got to get people's attention.
Right.
I was like, if only you could find an idiot to drive these things cross country. And he's like, boy, if only I could find an idiot to drive these things cross country. Huh. Almost as though if I just paid somebody to fly down here from Cleveland and just bought them dinner and tiki drinks.
Yeah.
If only I could find an idiot to ride
That'd
these
never
things
work.
cross country. And I was like, you son of a bitch. Yeah. So it did work. And these idiots drove these things cross country. And it was so much fun when James wasn't sick. At the time James was sick, it was not fun at all.
It didn't
Totally fucking unfun when he was ill. Yeah. Anybody else got any fun stuff to bring up? Or anybody ridden a fucking 125 across America and wants to live to regret to tell about it? It was, oh, man.
I'm just going to do that right through you.
Just exactly vicariously through that one. Again, when we came back off that thing, I just made it very clear. I was like, we don't ever need to do that again.
Yeah.
We counted our money. We returned the rental van. And we said, that never needs to happen again.
But it's happening this summer with a bunch of idiots on monkeys and supercars.
Yeah, what's up with that, Mr. Smith? Are you doing it?
Well, I want to do it, but I gotta borrow somebody's monkey for about 300 miles.
I think you need to rent a monkey.
I gotta rent one or take one out for a while and see if I become a cripple after 8 hours. Because if I do, it's like fuck that. I'm not gonna do it. But if I can survive it, I would definitely do it.
I mean, I think that bike is comfortable enough. The problem with what we were riding is it's called a Mad Ass, for fuck's sake. I mean, it's literally, it's in the name.
It's a
That
pole
thing had
with
the
a
worst
seat.
seat ever.
It's awful.
ever.
It was just
The seat was
garbage.
like this and rock hard.
Yeah.
It thrust you into the hand. I mean, it was cool and everything in a mountain bike kind of way.
Yeah.
But the seat just was wrong.
I still have one of them. I have the cross-country bike in my garage at home. And we've joked about many times, like, we should resurrect that. We should bring it back out and just set it up the way we had it for the cross-country run. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, and do what? Nobody wants...
shelf.
I was literally,
let
let's
people
just
see it.
hang it on the fucking wall.
Yeah.
Because they're terrible to ride. I mean, they're not good. It's one of the few motorcycles in the world that you look at it and you're like, that looks terrible. And then you sit on it and realize that looking at it wasn't enough.
Yeah,
that thing should have knobbies on it.
Yeah, and
That should be a Mid-Ohio ride.
that's
like
it.
this.
It
But
definitely is like a CT 110 kind of ish bike.
Yeah,
sort of.
not fun. Not the kind of thing where you're like, this thing's a blast. Because it does. It puts your weight in the wrong place.
CT 110's way better than
CT 110 is way better. And I would ride a CT 110 across America, but the Mad Ass, that was a bad idea. I mean, that really was a bad idea.
But that's what you've built your career on, correct?
What? Bad ideas.
Yes.
Fucking yet another float in the Phil Waters parade of bad ideas. That's all we do. And there's in retrospect, I mean, there's a Mad Ass for you, just so people can see what they look like. Yeah, they're fucking awful. It is what it is. It's a ridiculous thing.
Do they
It
still
sucks.
exist? I mean, can you still buy a new Mad Ass?
I don't think
Wait,
so.
why are they showing a Honda like C90?
Word
for
search,
a
man. Yeah, word search.
Modern Vespa.
Because there's probably a modern Vespa ad article that says the word Mad Ass 125, and then somebody with a brain in their head says, why don't you buy the Honda fucking Cub instead and save yourself death by hemorrhoids?
So the stock motor,
yeah.
was it made by Sachs or was
It was like one of those
It
made
had
of...
sacks on the case.
I was going to say, it's probably made of Lefanium or something,
Okay.
It's, yeah. None of it was actually made in Austria or, Germany.
Steve Hoffert needs one of those, though.
Well,
I have no desire to have one of those.
but the one that actually did get my attention and we all kind of were like, hey,
That's what I want right there.
what's that? Oh, that's your adventure?
I sent you a link. The only one that was in the United States for sale for $7,500.
I never got it.
You didn't?
What?
No.
This dude
Really?
bought one in France.
Let's see it.
And he had the title and everything, and then he moved to Florida. And so they allowed him to title the bike in Florida, and then he drove around and decided that he didn't want it, and he had it on Adventure Rider for $7,500. It had 3,700 miles on it. It was the the Adventure 700X scooter, whatever.
And those were
I sent everybody on the list.
I didn't see it.
Oh.
I don't get half the messages because if there's more than 11 people in a MMS, it cuts off.
It just cuts it off, right? For you, yeah. The one bike that was interesting, the high water mark, I'll say, of the entire experiment that was the Sox Madass was a piece of shenanigans that they built for one of the motorcycle shows. And this is the 500cc Sox Madass. And if you look between the frame rails where there should normally be a gas tank, because the frame rails are the gas tank, you'll see the head of a motor. And some people will recognize that motor, some people more than others.
Is that what I think it is?
John?
Is that a Royal Enfield
That is
motor?
a fucking Royal Enfield motor. So some maniac in Europe said, we need a weirdo prototype. So the blonde in the background is sitting on a Madass 50 or Madass 125. But in the, someday, if you're good, we'll produce this. Is a Madass, one of a kind, never seen it again, with a crazy Aprilia, weird Aprilia Vaporware sport bike seat on it. No gas tank.
Seat is really bizarre.
Yeah, remember those weirdo
slot
Aprilias?
Dick in or something?
Yeah, well, it's got a slot in it. And so the whole concept of this bike is slots, and you're going to see it's a twin tip exhaust installed on the vertical above the rear frame rails, and it's just the bike is just a litany of bad ideas.
And it's like two Madass frames, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hollow in the middle. There's a filler cap in front of the heads of the motorcycle, so that you could literally look down and do a valve adjustment.
Well, there's something about that.
But what sucked about it is they didn't even have the common courtesy to use what would have been available then, which would have been the unit constructed engine, fuel injected Royal Enfield motor. This is an old iron barrel, or what was eventually an AVL motor. So this is a 500cc, probably 13 horsepower Royal Enfield motor, purely just to be something in the shape of a motor.
And they got Gixxer front wheel, back wheel, and forks on the thing.
Yes, exactly. So that was the Madass 500 prototype. And when images of this popped out in 2007 or 2008, the motorcycle and scooter community lost their collective shit. I mean, this thing was fucking weird. And of course, everyone's like, oh my God, it's going to be a combination between the folks at Sox and the folks at Royal Enfield. Like that was ever going to work. And no, it wasn't. It was a one-off. It was purely, booth fodder. It was just meant to go in there and get people's attention.
Fodder.
Yeah, just garbage.
I like that.
Yeah. And every year you go to the motorcycle show and somebody pulls out some shit like that. And you're like, yeah, we're never going to see that. That's never going to happen. And thank God.
Take a picture right now
of
whatever it is. 'Cause
Yeah.
You're never going to see
You're
it
never
again.
going to see it again. And that's probably the only known photograph that managed to survive, 19 different people's computers getting viruses from looking at child porn. And this is the one picture that survived of all, because you'd have to be a pedophile to think that's a good idea. That's a fucking bad idea. It's a terrible idea. And looking at it now, I just don't even think you could turn the handlebars left and right without, yeah, right?
No shit.
Yeah. It just seems to be.
They have like a 15-degree turn.
Not even.
radius or
Right.
something.
So again, another, weird fucking vaporware. Well, at least this is art. So yeah, I take the Madass out of the garage,
And they painted it.
hang it up on the wall.
Yeah,
Yeah.
might
Never
as
have to do
well.
anything
Why
with
not?
it. Yeah.
And the worst part is they painted like gray matte, clay.
Yeah.
Looking.
It's
I
very
like the color, but that's
very
about all
weird.
I like. I like the split frame too.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very artistic, it's a very interesting exercise of art. I loved that part about it. But then when you start looking at art and you start going, wait a second,
Should have put a Ducati V-twin in it.
Yes,
That would have
you
been
put
cool.
a Ducati V-twin in there, would have looked fantastic. Or just a Suzuki Savage motor, just an LS 650, one longer, 650, sticking up through there. It would have been badass.
Did anybody ever
Would've
tell you
ran.
in all your dealings with all these
Yeah.
people why they called it the Madass?
Because somebody wrote it.
Really?
It probably had a name like it probably had a normal Sox name, like an RT100 or
Yeah,
a PS125,
Right.
and then somebody wrote it, and they got off and they were like,
Man, my ass is bad.
yeah, I mean, they probably had a long list of expletives.
Yeah.
And they were just like, can't call it that. Can't call a bike the Hemorrhoid 400. So we got to come up with something. So I'll bet you somebody was like, well, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Can we call it the God, this hurts my fucking taint?
The weeping anal.
The weeping anal. But Madass literally goes down in history as being one of the most appropriate names for any motorcycle ever.
Well done.
So as much as we bust balls, if you didn't see that one coming,
Right.
like we joke about the Chinese scooter we're going to have made for $200 a piece called the Caveat Emptor. The whole idea of the Madass 125, that shit was hitting you right where you live, man. So, Sicer. Woo. Yep. Sicer, baby, Sicer.
So, Mr. Smith, what is the Sicer? Can you tell us about? Did you make this, or what is this?
Made it. Yep. It's a basis of apple cider off the press. 10 pounds of honey. I think it's wildflower honey, and then champagne yeast. Generally takes about 30 to 40 days to completely ferment out, and that's a primary fermentation. That leaving the secondary almost a year, and so this is probably about 2 years old.
Damn.
It's tasty.
Thank you very much.
It does have that unique drinkable quality that likes to say, if this was in a larger quantity, you wouldn't have any problem making it go away, right?
No,
I mean, that's dangerous. That's the real deal.
And we have quantity.
This is true.
So when you brew that, how big of a brew are you doing?
I get 5 gallons of cider,
Okay.
and then I get 10 pounds of the honey. And once you put the honey in, it completely drops down to the bottom of your glass carboy fermenter. I use a 6-gallon fermenter. And you put an airlock on the top. You throw your champagne yeast in, put your airlock on there, and it just cooks away for 30 days. It eats through all the
honey sugar.
Yeah, the sugar down the bottom. So that gives you about I don't know, alcohol by volume. I think is about
I would think it would be 12 to 13%.
12, 13. Sometimes it gets up to 68%, but.
But then you can clean your hands with it.
Yeah.
And, right.
Yeah, kill coronavirus.
That doesn't sound
exactly right.
drinkable at that point. Though.
No, he's right. It's anywhere between 10 and 12.
So it's like a wine. It's like a glass of wine or something.
Yeah, and it's not effervescent at all.
No.
So
No. Good.
So I've got 38 gallons of this at home.
What? Do you really have 38 gallons of this?
No.
Oh my Jesus Christ! I totally bought into it because I was
Me
like,
too.
well, if
He's
he's going to
wearing
go
a
to the trouble, if he's going to go to the trouble of making it, he's probably going to make a bunch of it.
Don't
Yeah.
crack on the fez, baby.
Yeah, totally crack on that fez. That is really. I mean, when I was drinking it, I was like, oh, he's got a reasonable quantity of it. But then when I'm like, 38 gallons for
Well,
fuck's
I got a
sake.
shitload of it at home.
My
And Mrs.
God,
Smith said,
man.
take some of that stuff to the podcast. And pass it around.
Like she said, stuff. Come on.
Yeah, that stuff.
Well, I'm cleaning it up for the podcast.
Uh-huh.
She's just itching to cut the grass. She's getting nervous,
She's out there every night, sharpening her blades.
Measuring the blades.
That's
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
That's the game.
She's an idiot.
So one of our podcast listeners, a podcast participant, came up with a really good question about a tech question, and what Chris has come up with is basically
Went from participant to Chris.
right. Well, tuning fuel injected bikes. I mean, we all know the games with carbureted bikes. We could write books on the bad decisions involved with carburetor tuning, and listening to one guy, but going out and buying a bunch of jets, realizing that means nothing, and that you've just fucked yourself into a corner really bad.
There was a thing today on
Yeah.
the Japanese, vintage forum.
Yeah.
Where this guy's trying to do a CB750, but he's running no airbox
Right.
and just the pads. And the amount of different opinions
Right.
on what to do to get the bike run without the actual airbox.
Without the airbox, yeah.
Went from like, fuck you, you'll never do it, put
Right.
the airbox back on it, to I've done this and have 5,000 horsepower. And
Right.
it's insane
Oh, yeah.
how many different opinions people have on this.
And we've heard that too. I mean, I've got people that I know that have a bike that have CV carbs and have little baby pod filters or worse, and they run. You know, I'm not saying it's not possible to make it run. I'm saying that it's very unlikely,
Right.
you know, or
Right.
extremely difficult when you take vacuum away from a vacuum operated carburetor.
Right.
You know, when the only thing that makes the carburetor open and close is vacuum,
Right.
and you remove the source of vacuum, it's probably not going to work real great.
But it's amazing how many different opinions there are
Sure.
on all of that.
Yeah. And it's probably going to be like no vacuum, no vacuum, no vacuum, all the vacuum in the world.
Right.
So
yeah, I mean, it's differential vacuum.
Exactly.
You lose your differential vacuum. So
as long as you've got that, it works. But so the solution everybody says is obviously fuel injection. But yeah, thank you, Chris. But Chris brought up an interesting question. Your question was about the stock ECUs, like
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Fire away.
So people are starting to flash a lot of their ECUs. So my question is, well, what's the matter with the stock ECU that comes out of the plant or the dealership?
well, in some states, flashing an ECU is illegal, and exposing any part of your
Really?
body to the public is illegal. But
I think the main problem with the stock ECU is that it's lean.
exactly.
Wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah, I mean they're set up to
But you could fool around with that.
help prevent
Well,
global warming.
But there's also
So,
but ECUs are so advanced now. There's also crazy stuff that you can do. So like I haven't done it yet, but it's one of the things I want to do for my S10 is that the touring mode on my bike is so lethargic that it's almost hard to ride. Sport mode is so choppy that it's ridiculous. Like you can't ride in traffic in sport mode. It drives you crazy. So the guys have flashed the ECUs, which makes touring mode very usable, and then sport mode very peppy. They've also, during that flash, lowered the fan on point to 212 centigrade or Celsius instead of like 240 or something like that. So like they're keeping the motor cooler, they're adding like drivability, whatever. So these guys are doing it's like $200 to get your ECU flash, but apparently it really turns the bike into a very manageable, nice bike compared to what it is now. So I mean, there are benefits to I guess some ECUs getting flashed.
So the basics, let's just start for the cheap seats. ECU is simply an electronics control module. ECU, ECM, electronic control unit. It's a box usually similar to the size of a pack of cigarettes. And you're going to have a couple of different boxes in your motorcycle that have a bunch of wires going into them.
Right.
The one that has the most wires going into it is going to be your ECU. Okay. And basically that is the computer brain of the motorcycle. So for years, there's been a couple of different techniques for getting the motorcycle to do things you want it to do that are different than the original factory programming. And for the longest time, the answer was buy a power commander. And a power commander was just a device that took all the incoming data streams. So to run a fuel-injected motorcycle, and hell, to run a 80s carbureted motorcycle, you had some information coming in regarding the timing of the motor, the crank position. You had sometimes they have a manifold pressure sensor. And the idea was you would get in the way of that signal and then you would lie. So you'd have a device that said, this is the signal coming in. I'm going to take that signal. I'm going to modify that signal to make the spark of the motorcycle happen earlier or later. I'm going to take that signal. I'm going to modify it to make the motorcycle run richer or leaner. Okay, I'm going to change the way the motorcycle runs by interpreting a diagnostic device that's out in the motorcycle and changing the numbers that come in off of it. And that's what Power Commander made all their money on. You know, this is a whole school of thought, is just tricking a computer by altering the data stream. And the numbers come in, they just get fucked with. And so you put it in, and then Power Commander made tons of fucking money doing this. And you didn't have a bike. You didn't have a tuned bike. You didn't have a bike that was running right unless you put a Power Commander on it.
I would add that they worked fantastic. I mean,
Absolutely.
We did them in some scooters and stuff.
Yep.
And you play around a little bit. They generally gave you a guideline or how you set it up. There's, 5 different positions from idle to full throttle. Right. And each light you're doing with a series of LED lights, and you play around and toggle through everything. And they even had a chart that would say you have a Leo Vinci pipe, you have this is probably what you want to do. I mean, and you would it wasn't just something like I think it made a difference. No, it made a big difference.
Big difference.
But at the same time, like when they got to the point where hooking your computer up to them and stuff, if you followed their mapping and stuff, it was great. But if you really didn't know what you were doing, you could really fuck your bike up too, like pretty quickly.
Oh, lean it way out by accident.
Yeah.
And you would tell the company, you would basically order these things, and you'd specify what bike you had, and then they would send you the box for that, and then some of them would have a little USB cable that you hook up to your laptop, and then you'd download the program, and you could have all these different channels of information you could fuck with and tweak. Other ones, like John said, would just have a little pot. There'd be a little...
It looked like a credit card. It was
right.
a credit card.
Yeah.
That you'd stick with Velcro on the inside of your bike, and you pull it off, and you hit set, and then you had all these little things, and you could, and they could be green, yellow, or red, and you had 5 different ones, and it was depending on how you set those up.
That's probably a safer way to do it compared to
because
there you go.
The nerds who'd set it up,
and I'm sure it would only add fuel.
Yes, absolutely.
The only place where it leaned it out was on D-cell. So what they did was on a normal fuel injected bike. It was still giving it fuel, and it would make it pop and stuff. Like when you come off the highway, they cut all fuel on deceleration at close until it reached idle.
Yeah, and these things would go between $200 and $600, $700, depending on what it was. And so they were all things that you left your ECU that the factory put in the bike. You just leave that in there. You don't fuck with it, and you would just take the plug that came into it, and you'd put this in between. This was just
between
an intermediate.
the fuel injector and the thing. You would unplug the plug from the fuel injector, plug this into it, and then plug it into it. So it was whatever came out of the bike, it went through that and said, no, I'm going to add a little bit more here and there.
Right. And it's just a system of altering data. So that was, I'm just going to call that basically generation 1. And the first Power Commanders that came out, you would buy them based on your make and model of your bike, and based on what kind of pipe you were going to put on, or what your performance gains were, or what you wanted them to be. And you would tell these companies what you wanted. They would mail you a little mystery black box that you had no idea what the fuck it would do or what was in it. And you simply unplugged the wiring harness from your CDI, or your capacitive discharge ignition, and then later to your ECU, and you just plug this fucker in. And even on the old bikes where they were working on a capacitive discharge ignition instead of points. So in lieu of mechanical points, you had a preset computer, a very primitive computer, that would simply say, at this RPM, we're going to advance or retard the spark this much.
2,000 RPM.
Exactly.
We advance it.
Exactly. And what this would do is this would get in the way, and it would change that so that it would alter the spark timing. And it was the dumbest little device that you could buy, and yet it worked so well because the factory CDIs were all set up for EPA compliance. They were all set up to make these bikes run what we would deem to be unhealthy, lean numbers.
Wheezy.
Very wheezy, very fucking anemic. And it would be like in the old days where we would drill out the plug on the side of our carburetor and get the air-fuel mixture set more correctly as the baseline to make a bike run right. We couldn't do that anymore because this combination of a completely restricted carburetor and a completely restricted CDI, we couldn't get the performance we wanted to. And manufacturers figured that out and figured out a way to bypass that. So that was the very primitive first ever generation of what they would call electronic ignition tuning through the use of additional accessory devices.
So moving forward.
Right. So now what happens is as companies take their computer and say, well, this computer now is a dynamic computer. It's a thinking computer. It's an adaptive computer. It can take some signals like whether you're running 87 octane gas or 93 octane gas. And it can determine that based on these exhaust gas temperature sensors and lambda sensors, which detect the change in your air-fuel ratio as the engine becomes warmer. And it can take these data streams and go, oh, I'm going to adjust it this much, your spark timing, or I'm going to adjust how long your fuel injector is on per shot to compensate for this cold engine running condition, or to compensate for the high altitude, or compensate for the 93 octane gas you put in here. So the computers have the ability to do that. Well, that's pretty cool.
However, the first generation of computers, they were set very much from the factory, and they only had very narrow windows that they could operate within, that the manufacturers would set in the computer to say, I'm going to let it change it this much, a few degrees here and a few degrees there. But the computer was a solid state computer. You couldn't reprogram it yourself. So the solution was, did you buy a interface, an expensive interface, thousands of dollars,
to go between,
that you could then plug your computer into it and sit there and dick around having no knowledge of what the fuck you're doing, except for idiots on the internet telling you, well, you should jack this up and jack that up. And what you end up doing is jacking it all up. So services were started like Rexer, and I got Rexer pulled up on the screen because, you can see there's a device in the middle of the screen called the Rexer Professional. And that's the interface box. That's the graphic user interface that you'd hold in your hands, and then based on what cable you bought to go, as you can see, a Triumph serial cable for a Triumph that's equipped with a key-in fuel injector, that's $129 for the fucking cable. And if you got a KTM, you need a $139 cable. If you got a Magneti Marelli, that's going to be $329 for that cable, right?
Ducati.
You got it, baby.
329.
Yep. And so, as you can see, you need some components. You don't just buy a Magic computer. Now you have to have a way to get the data from the Magic computer into your particular motorcycle. Now, this Rexer Professional unit in the top center, that will work on a great number of motorcycles. It really will. It will work on 40 or 50 different models of bikes. But you do need to have a myriad of cables so that box can talk to your bikes, because there is no OBD2 standard with motorcycles as such.
What happened? No, I thought that was supposed to be standardized.
A few years ago on this podcast, we said that there was a mandate coming out that was going to state that motorcycle manufacturers were going to have to, as a right to repair issue, they were going to have to build out bikes to OBD2 standards.
We lied.
Well, our Zeros have it. Our Zero SRS and Zero SRF, they have an OBD2 port built right into the fucking bike.
one that has no motor like this.
And it doesn't have a gas motor, for fuck's sake, right? So as hilarious as that is you can take your scanner from Harbor Freight and you can plug it into a fucking Zero, and it will show you all kinds of data that does actually appear in the
the heated catalyst, the evap, and all that.
I think we're getting a P112 code on this one, John.
Your O2 sensors. Your O2
sensors are fucked. That's it. And so people who speak OBD2, they know what each one of the P codes means and what it relates to. Well, they didn't do that with motorcycles. So you have to buy these very... What's that?
The worst one you get is catalyst below efficiency.
Catalyst below efficiency. That's the most expensive one you can get. That's a $700 code, for fuck's sake.
What's P402?
I think it's P402, yeah. I can't remember.
Catalyst below efficiency.
So there are devices you can buy, so you can get programs for your computer that you can put an app in your computer or a little program, and then buy a cable that goes from your computer to your motorcycle. Also, there's proprietary ones. So if you're a Ducati dealership, you'll pay a license fee every year to get access to their updated programs so you can service Ducatis. BMW, they all have their own. And that's where it's a problem, right? Because it costs a lot of money to get those programs. The licensing fees are astronomical. Now, you get into these guys who are basically building their own universal interfaces so they can work with a lot of different bikes. You just have to have the cables. But then these manufacturers will fuck this shit around every once in a while. They'll rewrite the program or put a little trapdoor or a lock on their program to keep you from fucking with it. So maybe you just like, I don't want to fuck with my shit. I'm stupid. I just want to put this shit in a box and mail it to somebody and let them do it. Well, as luck would have it, all of these companies have a service where you can just mail your shit in.
Yeah.
And so Rexer's one that we've used for a while. And with Rexer, you basically contact them. You tell them how you want the bike to be. You tell them any mods you've made to the bike. You tell them what kind of gas you want to run it on. You put the ECU in a box. You overnight that sumbitch to them, wherever, whatever company you want to use. I'm not telling people they have to use Rexer. Rexer's one that we've had good luck with. They'll reflash your ECU, which means what they're going to do is the term flash refers to the type of memory that's in the box. So you have this flash memory, which is a permanent memory that even if you take all the power away from the device, the memory survives. And the bike comes with a certain amount of flash memory. And then there's a whole bunch of memory that it can learn things. What's called adaptive parameters memory.
The base memory is EEPROM.
EEPROM, exactly.
It's
So
like that with our radios. Each radio has a flash code. That's the flash.
that's the core program.
Then you have your
right?
firmware,
Yep.
which is that's like sort of the operating system.
Yep, and that's
then you have
built
your
in.
template. So then, so the template is all the little changes, and
shit you can
settings,
change?
all the shit you can change and settings you can do.
Now, most modern motorcycles will have what's called an adaptive parameters electronic control unit or adaptive parameters computer. And that means that the day you get your motorcycle and the day you turn the bike on the first time, it picks up things about how you operate the motorcycle, how you ride the motorcycle, what your conditions are where you live, and it will optimize the balance of that bike to work in your conditions. Because worldwide, different elevations, different parts of the planet, different types of fuel, and different rider performance. Where we get problems is, let's just say you took your ECU out and you got a company like Rexer here and you mailed your ECU into Rexer. They charged you $300 or $400. They put this mother beautiful programming into it that makes the bike run beautiful. It doesn't stall at lights. It doesn't, fart, sniff, or wheeze, and it runs just the way you want it to run. You go ahead and you put this thing back in your bike, and I mean, it's not technically hard to do. It is literally find ECU, remove the 2 bolts that hold the ECU in if it has them, unplug it, and then plug it back in when they're done. So your life is good, and you're going on for the next year, riding your bike, having a great time. Then you take it to the dealership to get an oil change.
Uh-oh.
And in the process of getting an oil change, the dealer wants to be a nice guy and says, "Oh, shit, did you notice that Chris's bike came in?" "Yeah." "Well, it hasn't been in for over a year." "Yeah, you're right. There's been some ECU updates. The manufacturer has gone from version 1 to version 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. Because when motorcycles get launched into the general public, they're really not proven out that much yet.
Right.
They don't do 2 or 3 years of testing on bikes. They do it in a computer. Go ahead, Steve.
I'll tell you a story about ECU programming.
Yeah.
I bought a Honda Civic hybrid with a stick
Yeah.
in 2005. I was getting 69 miles to a gallon with it.
Woohoo!
And I read that the dealer wanted to reflash all the ECUs on that car.
Right.
Because I think it was getting too good of a
Probably
gas
was getting
mileage.
much too good a mileage. Yeah.
So every time I took it in, I stood right by the car. I'm like, "Do not flash the
Right.
ECU." They're like, "Well, we have to flash your ECU." I'm like, "Do not flash my ECU."
Tell
Do
them
not."
you did, but don't do it.
So I had it for like 3 years. They didn't flash the
Right.
ECU. One time I took it in, and I don't know, I got sidetracked or something, and they flashed the ECU.
Right.
40 miles to a gallon.
See?
Went right from 60, like in the 60s,
Yeah.
to 40 miles to a gallon, and I sold the car because I was so pissed off.
Because it broke your heart, man. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, why wouldn't they want a car to get 69 miles to? I mean,
What do they care? They're not selling gas.
right. But I'm just saying the thing got 69. I mean, I have pictures of the speedometer. 69
And I can
miles to a
assure you
gallon.
that the dealership doesn't give a fuck.
No.
Okay? But the manufacturer says part of this campaign is that we need proof that all the VINs got ECU flashed, that all of them have been updated. And I've been through that with many manufacturers. And here's exactly what will happen. The bike comes out. You're lucky enough to go out and buy the very first of the new, KTM Duke and Duchess 125 or whatever the fuck it is, right? And so you buy the first one or the first generation of the ones, and you get out and you ride the bike around, and you're like, this thing's pretty kick-ass. I really like it. I'm really enjoying this bike. You do notice, though, that the weirdest thing is, like, just after you take it for a honk on the freeway, when you pull up to a red light at the end of the off-ramp, it stutters, farts, and stalls. Starts back up no problem at all, but that's what it does every time the bike's heated up, is it comes down to the end of the off-ramp, stutters, farts, and stalls. You take it to your dealer and say, I love the bike, but it stutters, farts, and stalls. And the dealer goes, well, we've never heard of that before. It's usually a lie, but in the case that it might not be, maybe you do have the first one and maybe he hasn't sold any more of those. So then you check the international forum for Duke and Duchess owners, and you realize that, in fact, a lot of people are having that problem. Well, then what will happen is, at some point, somebody on the forum will mention, well, I took mine to my dealer, and he reflashed my ECU.
Or they see that it's a problem, they put out a TSB on
Yeah,
it. So.
but it's with some of the brands I've carried, it's been totally common to have 9 or 10 different versions come out in the first year
But why are TSBs so secretive?
because they don't want them to turn into recalls. Because a TSB is not free, but it's damn close to free. That's a technical service bulletin. For the cost of a sheet of paper or an email to your dealers, you can head off a recall or a class action lawsuit. So
because you're fixing it all. But
if I tell you that every brake rotor that was ever installed on an FZR 08 might not have been torqued down to 26 pounds-feet, right? But we're not sure. Well, we don't want these rotors coming off and creating, dead daddy, right?
we don't want to have to look at every rotor in the whole.
We don't want to
so-
start a campaign. So what we do instead is we put out an email that goes out to every dealer in America that says, hey, according to your records, you've done warranty registration on 10 FZ08s or FZR08s. So here's your job now. I'm not going to let you make a single warranty claim on any of these bikes until you certify that you had that bike in and that you torqued those down and put a dab of blue Loctite on them. And once you go back into the computer and say, okay, Mr. Yamaha dealer, Yamaha distributor, I did that. Mary Rottencrotch's FZ08 has officially been torqued to spec. I've entered in it, and now it's been done. So now the manufacturer can say with a high degree of certainty, the problem has been addressed. Now, if Mary Rottencrotch sues you 5 years from now because her rear rotor came off, the factory, the manufacturer can say, we exercised our due diligence and we did everything in our power. It's an isolated incident. Now, if the dealer fucks up and the dealer's like, you know what, that's bullshit. John, don't do the work. Just fill out the sheet. Go back to the computer and punch it up like you did it. We'll take the $15 that they're going to pay us to do the job. And we'll take the extra 5 Torx bits they sent us in a little vial of blue Loctite and we'll put it in the back. That dealers do that shit. Dealers fail to do, and that's on the dealer, right? And then that attorney then would have to go after the dealer as opposed to going after the deep-pocketed manufacturer. So that's a TSB, the technical service bulletins. We get all kinds of them. I mean, that's it.
With the electric bikes, do you ever see something like this happen? So, like with the drones that I use for work and stuff occasionally, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they'll be like, needs a firmware update.
Right,
Okay.
yeah.
So, and you won't fly without doing it.
Correct.
So I go and I plug in the whatever, and then not only is it updating the firmware,
Right.
but it's actually enabling like geo fences where
Sure,
I can
of
no longer
course.
fly and stuff.
Absolutely.
Right? So with a lot of the electric bikes now that they're being Wi-Fi enabled and stuff, do you think that like updates are also going to is it going to be mandatory stuff where like you can't like say like somehow they limit speed to 70?
Ask anybody who owns a modern John Deere tractor. And
That's
if you,
a whole different
it's
story.
a whole different ball of wax.
Honest to God. Yeah, I was reading about
It's
that
a
today.
big deal, and you can Google that shit. I'm not going to get into it, but the right to repair, the ability for a human being to keep the shit that they own on the road without
That they
being
have
fucked with,
purchased
that they own and they own
for
outright.
$600,000. They're not allowed to fix their own fucking tractor.
With-
and that's going on in Nebraska right now.
Going on everywhere.
Wow.
With motorcycles, here's what I can tell you from my experience. If your motorcycle is running the way you want it to run, and your dealer tells you, hey, by the way, we got a firmware update, don't take it.
Imagine if you own one of the Volkswagens that has the whole diesel
The
thing.
TDI thing, yeah.
Yeah, as soon as you take it to a dealership, they're going to...
So our policy was when we were new at it, when we were new at this, every time a customer's bike would come in, didn't matter, we would always plug it into the computer, the diagnostic computer for that manufacturer, and we would check to see if there was a new version of the firmware. And we would check, and if there was, we would automatically install it. And the problem with that was the new version of the firmware. We knew the old one was working. The guy rode his bike here.
Right.
But then sometimes we would discover bugs and glitches in the new version, and we'd have all kinds of problems.
All the time with radios.
Exactly.
You're like, okay, yeah, I'm going to update you. Give us the first city. You put it in, you're like, This doesn't work. And they're like, oh, please.
And the worst is when it won't let you.
another radio, and then the same thing happens. They're like,
And-
there's a problem with this.
And when they won't let you downgrade to the other
That's-
you
firmware.
cannot.
This is what I'm going to tell you guys. In the motorcycle industry, if you're running version 7.6, if you don't have version 7.5 protected in your computer,
You're fucked.
which means in some cases, make sure your Wi-Fi is not turned on.
Right.
Right? If you don't have that thing under lock and key, change the file name kind of thing so that their diagnostic software can't go in and find the file and update it as part of their automatic BIOS update.
Well, that's kind of my question to you.
Yeah.
Do you think that electric bikes are going to try to bypass that and just always update themselves?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Not just maybe. Again, ask anybody with a John Deere tractor.
Right.
Right. So many of these vehicles now, they have got just they're going to latch on to whatever Wi-Fi signal they find, and without your permission,
Right.
they're going to check for an update.
They have Wi-Fi enabled CPAP machines.
Yeah.
Like if you're a commercial driver, if you don't get 4 hours on your CPAP,
Right.
it reports that you didn't use your CPAP,
Dude.
and you'll lose your commercial.
There are
driver's license.
so many things with
Yeah.
Wi-Fi. So my sink blew up the other week, and I had to replace my sink.
Yeah.
Right. So I was going and I'm buying the cheapest American standard fucking
Right.
sink with the hose, whatever.
Sure.
But so the guy's like trying to sell me on all this shit. And he's like, "What about this?" And he showed me a sink that's Wi-Fi connected.
It's the Internet of Things, Steve.
Yeah, and like you can be
It's
like, I
IoT.
need 4 ounces of 79-degree Celsius water,
Right.
and then you hold the thing up. I'm like, I don't need that in my life.
It's the worst
For
thing-
$875? No,
Yeah,
I don't
it's
need
a
that.
terrible
in my-
idea.
No.
So when it comes to the ECUs and when it comes to flashing them or programming them, you have a lot of options.
Right.
But the most important thing is if you're going to choose to upgrade your ECU, then you need to put a chastity belt on your diagnostic cable.
Right.
So whatever the diagnostic cable is in your motorcycle, okay, you need to put something on there to keep anybody from getting their fucking dick beaters on it. Because if it ends up in the hands of any other shop anywhere,
Right.
so many people are like, and I've seen invoices that come in from shops that are around us. And I'm like, why did you pay $95 for an ECU update? I didn't. It's on your fucking invoice, pal.
Yeah.
You paid it. What? They didn't even look. And I'm like, you got charged $95 so some twat could plug your shit in for like 9 seconds.
Yeah, and update it.
And update it. And on some of the motorcycles, I can tell you right now that, I can walk up to the bike, turn the key on. It says
Updating.
update required. Hit the button, and it's gonna every time you turn the key on, it's gonna say update required forever. And you're eventually gonna have to say, fuck it, okay, hit enter. Press the headlight button, and it's gonna say like, okay, go fuck off and have a cup of coffee, because for the next 20 minutes, I'm gonna be giving you the system that it wants you to have. It's not all evil though. Our Zero motorcycles, these primitive ass motorcycles, these old Zero FXs and shit, they went from like 62 foot-pounds of torque to 80 foot-pounds of torque
On updates?
overnight,
Oh, wow.
literally on an update. So all the marketing material had to change. Get out the white highlight, get out the white pen and mark shit out. Our, these bikes, that bike went from 98 torques to 116 torques, just because of an update. So they're not evil.
No cams, no chain,
cams, no
nothing.
shit.
Yeah,
You're
right.
like, what happened? I went to sleep. What happened? I woke up. I got 20 more torques. Fuck you. But by the same token, yeah, if you've got a map that you like, if you've got a bike that's running the way you like it to run, and it's a fuel injected bike, the best thing I could tell you is put a chastity belt on the fucking on the data cable, and don't let anybody fuck with it. We've seen customers screw themselves into the fucking corner on greasy kid stuff that they're buying on Amazon. And they're like, oh, if I see one more little semi-translucent box that, says like Speedco on the side, and it's got a USB plug on one side, and you're like, oh, just plug this into your OSB, 2 port, and your bike will go 150 miles an hour.
For $17.
For $17. Yeah. That shit does not fucking work. But this is the world we live in. All these products are going to become super cheap. The difference is if you see the word professional in it, that means that there's going to be way more ability for you to fuck your shit up. Now, these companies, and there are different manufacturers and there are different hobbyists all over the world. There's German guys that do nothing but fuck with BMW maps. And you can
Germans.
Yeah, there's the Germans. And you can go online and you can buy the little cord to go to your computer for $40. You can pay these guys $300 and get a membership in their tuning club, and you can download 80 or 90 different maps, as many as you like, and just play with them and go out and ride your bike and be like, that was good, but I like this one better.
You know what happens though? It turns into trying to find a movie on Netflix.
Yeah, it does.
You're just like fucking flipping.
Yeah.
You never actually ride.
Yeah. And you're not riding and enjoying it anymore.
Yeah.
But the one thing that's strange about that I do want to bring into focus, because these modern ECUs have ridiculous amounts of memory in them. It's astonishing. Like even a company like Morelli, which you think like the Italians are not known for their space program, right? So you wouldn't think that ECU would contain as much data as it can.
Memory's cheap. Though.
Memory's cheap now, exactly. And
I forgot what you said.
You're only working with 8K, so.
We got to keep the gelato cool. How are we going to get into space with the gelato?
Yeah. But that's the thing about all the bikes that do have the ability to change things. Many times, if the bike was running great and the bike isn't running great anymore,
It's not really the ECU. It's something. Something else.
step one is disconnect the fucking battery. So step one, if your bike was running great 6 months ago and now it's not running great, it's giving you weird shit, before you go attacking a bunch of shit, check the spark plugs, obviously. Yeah, go after the obvious shit. But disconnect the fucking battery. Good job. Good out. And then,
Woof.
Unacceptable.
Woof.
and some people will tell you, they'll tell you kind of crap like, you got to wait 24 hours, you got to wait a week and a half, you got to wait. No, you don't have to wait hardly at all. You disconnect the battery, you disconnect the terminal from the battery, the positive terminal. As soon as you take the positive terminal and you touch it to anything that's chassis grounded, so the positive terminal, once the positive terminal is disconnected from the battery, and you arc it to anything that's chassis grounded, okay, what's going to happen is the bike is now nulled out.
You've cleared it.
You've cleared it. And if you remove whether or not you remove the negative terminal is completely unnecessary. Okay?
Oh, all right.
Right. Because the idea is there will be a tiny bit of electrons in there. Now, I've heard stuff like, disconnect the battery and cycle the key a few times. That works too. That's great. But I've never found it ever necessary to leave a bike sit with the battery disconnected for a day. And yet I've heard many technicians tell people, well, in order for us to do this, we're going to have the bike overnight. I don't think
What's
that's
the cost
true.
of keeping your bike overnight?
I don't know. I mean, it varies, I guess, right? It depends on how nice the room is where they're keeping it. Is it a semi-private room or is it a private room?
I'm just going to get raped that night.
Right. And does the room have Wi-Fi? How many channels are on the TV in the room?
Right.
But the idea is once you disconnect the battery and once you take the positive terminal of the battery and just put it to the frame, then that computer's off.
And it eats all the juice out of the capacitor.
Right, exactly. And that's the idea, is you want to pull the power out of the capacitors when you do that.
Capacitive discharge.
Exactly. Perfect. And now you go ahead and hook the thing back up again. Now when you hook it back up again, you turn the key on.
Cross your fingers.
Cross your fingers. And only press one button. Don't twist the throttle. Don't dick around with the dashboard. Don't do anything. Just press the start button and let the bike start on its own. And it might not start the first time. But if it doesn't start, don't
Touch
whack
everything.
the throttle, don't do shit. Turn the key off. Take a step back. Turn the key on again. Press the start button again. It will start if it's fuel injected bike, hopefully. Don't
If you
help
do, and the thing is, if you give it time, like turn the ignition on and give it time
Yeah.
for the ECU to reset.
You got
because
it.
I did that with my sim.
Yep.
And I started it immediately.
Yeah.
And
Everything was out of phase.
Yeah, it was like
Yeah.
1,000 RPM was like 8,000
Yeah.
RPM on the top.
Everything's
because
out of phase.
It calibrated for whatever time when it was dropping back down
Yep.
after it did a check. It calibrated.
That became
at that
zero.
position. Yeah.
And so
thought
why
that was funny.
why I mentioned that about don't touch anything is your throttle is a demand sensor. And there is a throttle position sensor called a TPS, for lack of a better term. It's just the throttle position sensor. It's in every fuel-injected motorcycle.
TPS report.
TPS report, exactly. Got to get those TPS reports. But what happens with this shit is that if your dumb ass is over here like, well, she won't start, I'm going to give her quarter throttle. No, quarter throttle becomes 0 now. So the computer does a look, and the computer looks around and goes, okay, what's my throttle position? Well, it's clearly 0. But, you know, your dick beater's holding it, you know, half staff over here, right?
If you have fuel injection, you can't turn that little idle screw and turn your idle.
It's not an idle screw.
It's not an idle screw. It's your throttle stop.
Yeah, it is literally a throttle position stop screw.
If you change that screw, you then have to zero out your TPS.
You really can't without having the computer to plug it into.
Right.
So if you are looking at a throttle body on a primitive fuel injected bike, and you see something that looks desperately like a idle screw, stay off of it. Unless it's got a big plastic knob on it, you can turn
It's
with
like
your
your mom.
thumbs.
Stay off.
Yeah, well, there are there are plenty of fuel injected bikes that do have a knob for adjusting the idle.
Yeah.
And it is an idle control knob, and all it does is open the air orifice slightly, and then the computer detects that increase of air and then increase the fuel a little bit to go with it.
Well, that's largely what is controlling the idle in a fuel injected is how much fuel you have a given opening. You have a given amount of air.
Yeah.
It gives it a little more or a little less fuel and
Time. Your time stays.
Some may have a bypass error
Absolutely.
too.
Yep.
So it's a solenoid that it's a variable valve. That
When you're dealing with a stepper motor, and the stepper motor is literally just doing one thing, and that's saying, how long am I going to squirt? And I'm going to squirt a given number of times, but how long I squirt per time is the job of the stepper.
Or Peter North.
Because your fuel pressure stays constant.
Exactly. Your fuel pressure doesn't change. Right. So this is a big deal. I mean,
it better not change.
It better not, yeah.
Or if it does, that's a
well,
problem.
when you're fucking with that and you're fucking with screws and shit on the side of your fuel injector, all you're doing is fucking up the baseline. Because those screws that probably have some sort of glue on them are not with which to be fucked for that reason, because they're set from the factory when they have a given amount of flow going through them. Some, 11-year-old at the factory reaches up and gives it the right twist on the screw until the number is what it should be. He drops a dab of "don't fuck with me" glue on it, and he sends it down the line. Well, then American Hillbilly goes like, "Oh, works for me," and then the bike that stalls every time he stops at a red light doesn't stall anymore. But it also runs like shit because all he's done is altered the base tuning of the fuel injector and made all the other numbers in the pie
And the curve just
and the curve
slides
go
over,
wrong.
like-
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So the best way that you can do that to reset your bike, if your bike's running poorly and it wasn't running poorly before, null out the battery completely, start the bike using only the start button. I'll get you in a second. And once the bike is going, leave it the fuck alone for a minute or two.
So, I have a question. So,
Well, I'm going to get Chris's first.
Okay.
Okay?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
All right. So on my S10, it's fuel injected.
Right.
It has 2 throttle bodies.
Yep.
And so I bought the throttle body tuner.
Right.
Whatever, the
Yeah.
Twin Max
You
throttle
got
body
it,
tuner
yeah.
or whatever. And I sat there and I ran the thing at idle. I followed the directions.
Yep.
And I tuned it, and the fucking thing runs way better now.
Sure.
But so how is that not fucking with the setup of the?
Because the device that you bought is replicating the device that should have been used at the factory when it was originally tuned and set up to go out into the world.
Okay.
The thing is that the world that you're experiencing is slightly different than the world that was at the factory. So what you're doing is you're taking a factory program that was designed to run at a certain level of richness and leanness, and you're saying we're not going to work that way anymore. So we're changing things.
It's the EPA's fantasy world.
Exactly. Once we
That the
enter
bike's
the real
running
world. Exactly. So Chris, you're right.
Okay.
Well, that's basically what you answered.
Yeah. And once you've done that, you let the bike run for 3 or 4 minutes unassisted. You get it up to operating temperature unassisted.
Yeah, I think
then
that's the key, though. Like you said, you should get it up to operating.
and that's what we're going to
temperature.
talk about next
'Cause then it will
about
go
all
into
these
closed
things
loop.
is yes. So there's a difference between open loop and closed loop. And that's where we get into the real fucking problem of people adjusting their bikes.
Because a lot of things are running open loop.
Yeah.
And as soon as it goes down into closed loop,
Yeah.
that's when
It's game on in open loop.
yeah.
Open loop is let's get this bitch running. Open loop is it's cold as fuck outside. My motor's not at operating temperature. I'm just going to get this bitch running. So the nasty shit that's coming out your tailpipe and what you're experiencing in the way of power on an open loop. Open loop just means the bike is cold, we're just going for it. We have basically one pattern, and that's what we're going to throw.
And we kind of know what'll run.
It'll
It'll
run,
run.
but it ain't going to run great. Closed loop is when you see a lambda sensor that is further down the tailpipe, and that extra lambda sensor is put down further down the tailpipe, and that's detecting this variance in temperature between the way it was when it started and the way it is now. And there will be data plugged into whatever that sensor feeds back into that says at this temperature,
And at this oxygen
level, the bike is deemed to be running warm. And now we're going to go into our actual closed loop programming. And closed loop programming is what you're going to use all day long. If the bike ran on open loop all the time, you'd get super shitty miles per gallon and you'd get super shitty performance. You'd smell what's coming out the tailpipe. And that's why...
melt a cat, too.
Yeah, you probably burn up the cat. But that's why even in here, when people are like, I want to start the bike in my shop. No. Well, it's okay. It's fuel injected. I don't give a fuck. For the first 3 minutes that thing's running...
It might as well have a carburetor.
It might as well have a carburetor or a monkey sitting on the gas tank dumping gas into the carb. Because when it's on open loop, it's just a matter of survival. It's just a matter of keeping the motor running long enough to get into that situation where now the bike is warmed up and it can run correctly.
Sometimes, if your bike's, like if something fails on your bike, you can just disconnect one of your sensors. It'll force it back into open loop. And you'll be able to make it home.
And that's limp home mode.
Yeah.
Right. That's limp home mode. And a lot of computers in motorcycles and cars will do that. So if something's broken or something's not working right, it'll essentially deactivate that second lambda sensor, the rear lambda sensor, which puts the bike default or the car default into that open loop mode, which again, it's going to run bad. There's going to be a light on the dashboard. It's not going to be great, but it is going to get you home.
Yeah, right.
So that's something that as motorcycles that are fuel injected, we never could have gotten 120 horsepower out of a 600cc motor without fuel injection.
Right.
Not
You
for the
probably
common
could
man.
have, but it would have run like crap.
Yeah,
in
any
every
other time.
range except
Right,
like
except for
that
that
one
power
that
band.
tiny little.
And that's true. And it wouldn't have been accessible to the common guy. It wouldn't have been accessible to the dick on the street. And repetitively, too. And on a bike that's dirty and hasn't been maintained right. So the fuel injection system and these electronic control units do give us amazing gains in power and in efficiency. And they're not to be overlooked. And people were like, oh, this is garbage. I wish it just had fucking points on it again. Well, it couldn't do what it does. There's no way we could get there without this. The tuning of it, though, yeah, man, that is like, there's a lot of people that will take your money. The trick is what the company put on the bike from the factory. I always recommend, if you're going to change mapping, if you're going to alter, in my opinion, it's better to have it reflashed by a professional who knows what they're doing, somebody who's been proven to know the job and do the job right, and then put a chastity belt on your data cable so that nobody else fucks with your tune. Because now you paid for that tune. That's yours. But the second somebody hooks something else to it, it's going away. It'll stay in the memory because it is hard memory. That is flash memory. It will be there forever. You could take the ECU out of that bike and put it in another bike, and that special tune you have will travel with it, which is badass, in my opinion. But you have to protect it. Make sure nobody throws a stock tune on top of that.
If you want to see a really good representation of any of this tuning in live action, go to Norwalk Drag Way or something like that. All the guys from the 50s and 60s, 70s, whatever, that used to be like, oh, I'm a carb master and all this. All these guys running cars now, all these like big turbo cars and all this stuff, or even nitrous cars, after every run, they're back on top of the car with a laptop.
Absolutely.
And they're just changing everything. And like, when I was working for Blaster, we did a video series on this guy, Barney Barnhart, who runs Top Fuel something, whatever. And he was like, he's been racing since the 50s. He's 70 years old or something like that, 68, whatever. And he said he had to learn. So now, once, like, you just put the car back together new after everything with new plugs, new all that stuff, make sure nothing's broke.
Right.
Then the rest is all done through the laptop.
Makes sense.
The barometric pressure, the temperature, the tire,
everything.
All that. Oh, it's a little slow last time, and it changes, and that's it. It's crazy. Like literally, sometimes he's pulling up to the line, and his wife will run the laptop out
Yeah.
with their manager,
Right.
And he's about to go, and they plug it in and change two things. On
make
the
a
thing.
microscopic
Yeah.
change real quick.
It's crazy.
So there are a lot of guys too that'll run a cord into their, in a modern car, they'll run a cord into the car with them, and they'll be making changes on the fly. Young tuner kids, and they'll be making changes on the fly while they're driving their car going down the road because they're doing active live data analysis and changing on the fly.
I think that's with an after. Wouldn't it be an aftermarket ECU? Because you don't want to ever flash
Right.
your ECU while it's running, or reset your ECU while it's running.
Because there'll be a dead spot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
you can run
damage
active
it.
diagnostics in anything. In fact, that was one of the big changes for us with the Piaggio products is when we had a device that we could actually put on the customer's bike and send them out with it. And so we had the device that was the interaction between our laptop and your bike. Well, I could just disconnect my computer from it, put it onto the seat of your bike or tape it to your frame, send you out on a 2-day trip, 3-day trip. If you had a problem that we couldn't seem to find when the bike came in, we could send you out for 2-3 days. And just like a video
data logged
timeline, it would data log everything. And so I could just look for the high spots and low spots and notice that, oh shit, 17 minutes after you left my shop, we had a big old spike, something weird happened. And that for 2 days it didn't happen. And then again, you're bringing it in 17 minutes away from my shop, there's a big old spike happen. And then we realize there's a set of railroad tracks there. And we look at the time, and you go, well, that's about when I'm hitting those railroad tracks. Well, then we find there's a loose connector on a probe, and we realize that you have this big shock to the frame, and all of a sudden all of our numbers go crazy, and the bike starts running like shit. Well, we've seen weird shit like that happen, where it was like one bent pin on a connector, which would have driven us crazy, especially on an ECU that's got 62 pins.
Right. How do you know that?
How do you know that?
Right.
How do you test it? Because as soon as you take the connector off, well, everything looks great. And what do you plug it into to test? Because there's 62 fucking tiny little pins there. We do the in-flight diagnostics, and we have the ability to bring that back and look at a real-time layout of your travels. We can find a problem with it. That's why I do recommend sticking with the OEM hardware, because you'll be able to have access to that kind of stuff. Whereas if you go to an aftermarket ECU, you will lose a lot of that future serviceability. So if you leave Kawasaki's ECU and you go to somebody else's aftermarket ECU, you may lose the ability to do diagnostics in the future that any Kawasaki technician can do. If you can get a technician to raise their hand to God, disconnect their computer from the Wi-Fi, and do your diagnostic and problem solving, but without dumping in the new map, then that's a good relationship to have. That's a great way that you can retain the ECU flash that you paid for without giving up the ability to have the diagnostic that the dealership can offer you. So, or pay the money for a program and plug it into your box, your laptop, and be able to do all your diagnostics at home. And it'll red flag. It'll show you where the problems are if your bike's running bad. And then you address them just like you would the OBD2 sensor on your car. Yep. That's the way it works. Yeah. Chris is dissatisfied with the answer.
No. But there's certain skill level involved in doing that, and part of the original question was, or people bitching and complaining about. So it's a Kawasaki Vaccaro, and when they roll on the throttle, it pauses and burps and what have you. And my question is, hey, you spend legitimate money for a for a motorcycle, right?
Right.
Why is it doing this? Why is Kawasaki not recognizing this and taking care of it on their own, rather than having to go out to a third party
absolutely
to say, all right, fix this shit, because they're not going to do it.
And you do, and that's when you do have to kind of find a dealer or find somebody who knows the product intimately and say, has anyone fixed this problem? Who has the Vaccaro that doesn't do that? And if
or am I the only one that's experienced this?
Right, exactly. And if somebody says, well, okay, if you do this, it'll be great. Okay, well, what is that? What is the issue? Or do they, quote, all do that? Because I've really, very rarely in my life have I ever found a situation where somebody said, well, they all do that. And then I do a little bit of research and realize they don't all do that, but they all do that as the easy answer. And there have been very few things where I wasn't able to, through the internet or through my own research, discover that
oh shit, it's usually something that's fairly inexpensive to fix. If it is a fuel-injected machine like a brand new, like a Kawasaki is going to be, it would be surprising to me that how long has that Vaccaro been around? I mean, that thing's been around for a long time.
Yeah, I think it's been 10 years.
10 years at
minimum.
least. So somebody's got that thing noodled out. I don't believe that they all run poorly with that particular symptom. What I'm inclined to believe is that's the lazy answer. And sometimes on the internet, you get the lazy answer. Yeah.
And I was surprised that the one guy, his name's Ivan, Ivan the Fixer, whatever that helped. He says, well, you have to run 93 as your fuel.
Right.
I thought, okay, well,
I disagree.
Maybe he's goosing it a different way, right?
Yeah, I'd be very hard pressed to find any motor vehicle where running 93 octane was the answer.
But with his flash, he says, "What you buy my flash?
Oh,
you
he
have
could
to
build
run
it that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you have to run 93.
He could write his flash to be that way, where it requires very high octane fuel. In my opinion, that's a dumb flash. Like that's not the right way to build it. I would always make a flash to be. I would always set a map up to be a map that gives you the ability to run the most flexible fuel possible from 87 to 91 octane, because that's what you're going to be able to find out in the world.
Right. If you're traveling,
Correct.
you don't want to be limited to one type of gas.
Yeah, and yes, when you design a map, when you lay a map out, you get to choose where you want the air fuel mixture to be, and you get to choose how you want the spark to be. The guy who's designing the map gets to,
He's in a lab.
He can put anything he wants in there.
Yeah.
Now, whether or not it works, that's a totally different thing. And it's a very difficult thing to bench. To
bench test.
To talk about it, bullshit about it, because yes, it's going to be the guy that's building the map. Now, if everyone's lazy and nobody goes to the trouble of building their own map, then you're not gonna get it. But you have to think of a map as being literally a topographic map. It's a 3D representation of air, fuel, time, spark, throttle position, everything. It's literally a terrain map, and that's why it's called a map. It's not short for something else. A map is an actual three-dimensional diagram of what this particular performance program looks like. And it takes into consideration all of these points of data that the motorcycle experiences in 1 second of operation. So it is a very tough thing to bullshit and say, oh yeah, well, this can't happen. That's
So to sum it up,
yeah.
Is it in seconds or is it in like operational cycles?
It's literally in duty cycle. It can be I'm going to pull one up just so you guys can look at it, and just to get a quick look at what a tuning map looks like, just because it is a strange thing for people that haven't seen them before. But the whole idea with it is you lay out a map, and this is what a map looks like on your computer. So this is a real common program, PV Tech. PV Tech does ECU research and development, and what you can do is you can use your mouse, and your mouse becomes a little picking tool, and your mouse literally can reach down there, and I can grab that spot right there, and I can pull it, and I can alter the performance of the vehicle. And when I pull that, I'm making it richer, I'm making it leaner, I'm altering the time. And if you take a look at this particular map, it shows engine speed versus manifold pressure. Okay? So this one map only controls, so you can look at the dynamic ranges of the things in question. That basically is giving us, now there will be a map for many, many different channels of data. And if you take a look, there's X, Y, and Z axis for every single thing. And as a person who's going to be tuning something, you can change these values at that particular throttle position. And as you can see, it gives you this almost infinite level of tunability.
What's the Z-axis on there?
I can't read it on that one, but it's probably base mechanic efficiency or something like that. Yeah. They're and we'll go, you can go to different ones that'll give you a little bit more information, but the more channels you get of information, the more complete tuning that you can do. And it does give you the ability to have a lot better picture. So what did we say? That's your base fuel map on the left-hand side over 1 millisecond. And then you have the RPMs run left to right. And you have your, looks like barometric pressure on the left. So, and then there's RPMs that run across the top. So you can see at very low RPMs, around 260 RPMs, there's no data. Your fuel mapping is at nothing. And then if you get to 1300 RPM, you can see that jumps up to around 10, okay? And that's 10 milliseconds on your fuel injector. So as you change the pulse length on your fuel injector, you can change the response to you can see the way the RPM alters. So that's just a little tiny slice of what a map is when you're doing map-based ECU programming. Now, obviously, these guys spend a ton of time to design these maps. Some guys will steal from a buddy that has a map set up, and they'll tweak it a little bit. Some guys will change an exhaust, and they'll grab a map, and they'll tweak it a little bit. But ultimately, you have to be a little bit careful about what you're putting into your motorcycle. So if you're going to change and alter your ECU by installing one of these maps on it, and that's the thing, is most modern ECUs have the ability to accept these maps if they're written in the language that motorcycle manufacturer speaks.
And there's a whole bunch of forums where there's like hacker dudes out there that like you can put in, like, I have a Yoshimura pipe and I changed this and I did that. And the guy's like, here's a map that works.
Exactly.
And you plug it in.
Yep.
And I mean, you're trusting a dude on the internet.
Exactly.
And depending on how involved you are in that forum, it might, whatever, but
don't trust the dude.
I don't trust half those people anyway, because look at an exhaust. Somebody puts an exhaust on.
Yeah.
And you have 10 people with the same exhaust. It did nothing. It did something. It did,
way more power.
It's the ass dyno.
And
nobody has the same ass dyno. Like, they're all, they're all different.
Take it to your local shop, please.
Well, and that's the thing,
usually
too.
That works, but occasionally you'll find a guru. There's sometimes you can find a guru, and there's a dude out there that does pretty well.
Oh, that guy's high most of the time.
Well, it is a strange thing, and we joke that when we were doing the Moto Guzzi stuff a lot, there's so much. Dealers can't keep up with the amount of data that's out on the internet. I don't have enough time to scour the internet for every single person that's writing a new program. And I always get a kick out of it. Look at this website. If this website was done by like my 9-year-old niece, right? I'm supposed to trust this website, the guy who built this website, with the health of my fucking 1400cc motor. Look at this guy's fucking website. But yet he is the guy.
Guzzi's maps up there
Seriously.
at the top of the right-hand column. That's all I want to know.
Right. And this is funny because the most important thing on this website is the one that he took the time to figure out how to make scroll with his limited HTML skills.
Use at your own risk.
That looks like the Lake Erie Loop.
It does look like the Lake Erie Loop website. It does.
This website looks like somebody went to jail in 1995 and then came out and built a website.
This is myfirstwebsite.com.
It's not even Squarespace. It's like space.
No, this is literally, if you bought like Right Can of Pop in 1996, you could get a CD-ROM that helped you build websites. And this was the website you could build. And so I'm going to trust this website to have, a package for my 1200cc 8-valve Moto Guzzi, have a map. Rather than getting a company or go to your dealer or have yourself take the ECU and mail it to somebody like Rexer, who does have a proven formula for making power and has a nerd that gets paid $70,000 a year to sit there and write maps.
Bastards.
Do you have a text trail on your cursor?
No, I don't.
I did that.
Oh, you did that?
It was like Lake Erie Loop. The date.
The text
so
trail,
everywhere you'd move,
right.
it would
I
go
saw.
right.
I remember that. Yeah, right. So this is a great example. Like a lot of these look like this. So a lot of these ECU hacker things, I'm not going to get into it. Tune List created by Tom, and Tom is a serious web designer.
You can tell.
You could tell. He's really, really read a book or two. But most of them do look like this. It is like the dark web, and it's what you'd expect to see. It
What does
does
it look like in Portuguese?
I
please?
can't even imagine.
Well, that's like you get a template, and that's
Yeah.
pretty much that's
Yeah.
no.
That's all fucked up.
It's all but I guess the point is that when you choose to do this stuff, you are taking your ECU into your own hands, and I always think it's funny because they'll usually start off by like, "Oh, thank you for use in our programs. To use best, get cable Amazon number 123878," and then you basically go to the forums and follow like all the people who are just butthurt that they fuck their shit up using this. And I'm like, if you fuck your shit up using that, I have not a single sympathy
Look,
for
it
you.
fucked it up just going.
I
to
did.
it.
I now have the Corona AIDS virus on my computer. Yeah, so that's a real thing. So that's about ECU
Herpetitis.
tuning. So it really is. That's about all we're going to go into that. Nobody else
Enough of
got
that
nothing
shit.
else? Enough of that shit.
I have
One interesting thing about that was that adding fuel
Yeah.
actually increased fuel mileage.
Yes.
They were saying 13% better fuel because you were getting a better power.
You're getting a
stroke
better
out of
burn.
it. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so here's an interesting thing. Today, so you're hanging out with your friends the other day, and
allegedly.
Allegedly. It'd take at least 3 people to fuck an ostrich.
It was a sick ostrich.
It was a sick ostrich. So this was kind of an interesting little nugget. So we had a Zero that was performing poorly in the field, and it just wouldn't light up for the customer. The customer had put the bike to bed, literally, long, cold winter. He'd done what the protocol was, which was to ignore ein bike. So basically, put your bike in the garage, put a blanket over it, don't plug it in, and just leave it the fuck alone. They were telling people with emerging technologies, there's always like, do this. No, don't do that. No, do this. No, don't do that. And we've all heard it since we've been children, like, oh, well, don't drain the battery all the way, or charge it all the way up, or
run it all the way down.
Or run it all the way down.
Back up.
3.8 volt
Don't
storage.
set it on a cement floor.
Right.
cell.
The more battery
Don't
bullshit.
sit on cold bleachers.
You'll get piles. Your battery will get piles. So last year, going into wintertime, the order of the day was to get your motorcycle down to about 65% state of charge, turn it off, and live your life. Don't
What's
plug it in.
now? What's it now?
Hold on, we'll get to that.
Okay, because
If I
wanna
tell-
make sure
if I
I'm doing
tell
the
you-
right thing.
Shut
If
the
I
hell up.
if I tell you everything right now, how will we keep our fans in
Now I'm
suspension?
scared.
Right.
Now you just scared me.
You should be.
Jesus
You should be
Christ,
terrified,
Steve.
Steve. You should be terrified. Well, your bike's such
did it
old tech,
wrong.
it won't
What
matter
you need
anyway,
to do
so.
is you need to take like a 4-gauge wire and connect the positive to negative,
negative,
and
yeah.
just leave
Right.
it there
Yeah.
the whole winter.
I've done that before.
How to weld quickly.
Yeah.
So it turns out on some of the new bikes, rather than have a DC to DC converter, which takes the big 106 volt battery and slices you off a quarter pound, it just slices you off 12 volts to run all the automotive-y kind of shit.
One or 2 cells or 6 cells or something like that.
Turn signals, what have you,
Yeah.
right? So rather than running a DC to DC converter to give you 12 volts out of a 106 supply source that you're running down the road on, Zero decided to install in every single Zero motorcycle, all the SRFs and SRSs, this handy-dandy, awesome lithium battery. I'm going to pass it around the room. And what's really awesome about it is it has a heater cell around it. So it actually has a battery preheater built into it. Now, this battery is made by a company some of you have heard of called Anti-Gravity. And it's a very nice piece of kit. And it retails in the neighborhood of $160 or $70 hairs. And this battery is in all the Zero SRFs and SRSs so that you can have the dashboard and the turn signals and all that 12-volty kind of goodness independent of the main bike's battery, the big battery, right?
So does it have a built-in little charger for that?
Yeah.
Oh,
It does.
Okay.
So it does. And so it just turns out in this scenario where our customer being a duly diligent Zero owner wanting to play by the rules in sometime mid-October, turned his motorcycle off at 65% as they said to, and put a blanket over it and walked the fuck away. So when he went back out to his bike and he went to start it up again, nothing happened. Turned the key on, dashboard was dead as a doornail. And it had no power, no chooch, no chotch, no nothing. And so I dispatched myself out to his house. And on the Zero electric motorcycles, in the front of the battery box, there's a little rubber plug. And if you take the little rubber plug out, there's 2 little dip switches in there, 2 little buttons. And if you press them both at the same time, I shouldn't be telling anybody this, it will reset the battery board. So a battery that's put itself to sleep or shut itself off for some other reason, you press and hold these things for a few seconds, and the lights go, they cycle through their little cycly deal, and they go red, green, 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 and then they flash green intermittently to tell you everything's okay. Because I've done all that, and I have my little light that says everything's okay, but I still don't have anything when I turn the key on. The technician at Zero, and by the way, thumbs fucking up that I could call a guy on my phone and have a guy in California pick up the phone who knows what the fuck he's talking about.
Thumbs up for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And talk me through this situation. And he goes, well, maybe it's your little lithium. I went, who
Say
you calling
what?
little, mister? Right? It's completely average lithium. I've been told it's normal.
Yeah. Did you measure from the top or the bottom?
I measured from the top
Oh,
because I'm a
okay.
gentleman.
Right.
And you only measure from the bottom if you're cheating.
All right.
McMurray's a piece of shit. But anyway, so I did in fact, I happened to have in my pickup truck one of those free Harbor Freight voltmeter, multimeters. And I went over and I checked his little lithium battery, and it was reading 0.46 volts.
Ooh.
Oh, that's not enough.
No.
So that's not enough at all. So I was able to then get the handy-dandy tool that I carry with me everywhere I go, which is the no-code GB40 get your ass out of trouble jump box. This will jumpstart my diesel.
And I don't know how it stays in cold environments
Yeah.
and doesn't lose charges. It's amazing. Those
Somewhat
things are-
miraculous.
Yeah, right.
And so I do charge this up, and I keep this with me when I go pick up all the cars I pick up in Maryland and stuff, because they've been sitting on a dock for a long time. Their batteries are dead.
And it can charge your phone like 1,000 times
Yeah.
and like everything else.
It's
Like
kind of ridiculous what this thing can do.
Yeah.
And it weighs about 1.5 pounds without the cables, and it's not exactly fun portable, but it's totally better than carrying around a big-ass battery.
Mm-hmm.
And this motherfucker will start just about anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I hooked this up to his... and you can put this in just the on mode, where it kind of detects what the draw is and gives it appropriate. Or you can press the exclamation point, which is the exclamation button is the fuck you, we're making this shit happen right now.
Start right now.
It is. It's the start, you
Give her all
bastard.
she's got, Captain.
Yeah, this one has this little red button
that's what you use on nipples.
with an exclamation point. If you use that on your nipples, you'd be in
Let's
a
see.
different town.
Yeah.
The,
How many volts?
yeah, 12 volts, but all the amps you could ever
All
want.
the amps.
All the amps. So I hooked this up to his version of this, and instantly everything was good. The dashboard came on, beautiful. And I was like, well, we've identified the problem. So decided, since I didn't have one of these in my pocket at the moment, which I could have, it's less than a pound, and it's very portable.
Very light. I thought it'd be heavier.
Right. And so would anybody, just for the sake of fun, this is 13.2 volts, this is lithium. And I can tell you that it is made by a company that we know and love, Anti-Gravity. Would anyone like to guess what the amperage is in this thing in my hands right here?
Amps.
Amps. Like
CCAs or
not,
like
cold cranking amps is...
hour.
No, we're not going to do amp hours. We can do amp hours if you want, but that's not really going to give us much in the way of math. The amps to start something.
350?
It's 120 amps, which will start a V8.
Yeah.
Strangely enough, and they make 2 versions of this little bastard. They make this one and they make the heavy-duty one. So this one is 6 amp hour. They make a 5 amp hour that is not 120 amps. It is 180 amps.
Guess what?
Yeah.
That's what's in your NOCO.
I know it, and that's exactly it. So I was just like, oh, I think I know what they did there. So yeah, interestingly enough, so I did order a spare one of these from the folks at Zero, because I wanted to make sure that, if we ever have this problem again, we got one standing by. We were able to take the customer's unit and we were able to charge it back up, tested it out, and everything was tip-top with it. Go ahead.
I was going to say, you almost could have taken that jump box, put it on that,
Yep.
turn the bike on, plug the charger in.
Yep.
Like if you get it enough charger, it probably would have charged up in the bike.
Oh, I'm absolutely certain of it.
Yeah.
There's no doubt in my mind. So here's the problem, though, is in last year's method of putting the bike to sleep did not take into consideration this little guy. And what I thought was interesting is this little guy has a heater on it. So you guys can see there's a little heater wrapped around there. And because lithiums don't perform well in particularly cold temperatures. And so I was like, well, how the hell? I was like, this little bastard isn't self-heating, is it?
It is?
I don't know.
Well, it has a plug. What's
It
that
has
What's
plug.
the plug for?
Yeah. Well, the plug goes into a loom inside the...
But it could be running off of itself.
It could be in the circuit for this because
Does
it
it
is a
have its own
12-volt.
BCM?
What's that?
Does that have its own BCM?
No.
That runs off there's another BCM on the board?
Well, here's what I'm going to say is I haven't opened this box yet, so I don't know if there's a battery control system inside this box because most lithiums do. Most lithiums do have a little balancing board in there just to make sure that they do charge at the same rate. But I was curious as to why this died. But here's one thing I will tell you is last year the solution was put the bike to bed at 65%. Don't plug it in. Now there's been a firmware upgrade. And since there's been a firmware upgrade, they have said that now you put the bike to bed plugged in and leave it plugged in.
Fuckers.
But if you haven't had the firmware upgrade, then you're still running on last firmware, which is put the bike to bed at 65%. We know that storing the bike at 65% won't hurt it because you're not putting any stress on the battery. The
plug your
battery's
bike
just
in right
parked,
away.
right? Throw it away. Just buy another one.
You should have been riding it last weekend anyway.
I did.
Okay.
It's
I
fine.
did ride it, but I wrote it down to like 6.
Yeah, and that's fine, and that we know that's going to work. But apparently now there's
It's
some
only gonna
new.
sit for a week.
There's some new.
But it
you know.
should be upgraded because I had it in for the tire, and you guys.
Yeah, we
that
probably hit
battery.
it. Yeah, we probably
Calm
hit it.
down, Steve.
I'm sure you're okay,
You know,
Steve.
I do not like doing things the wrong way.
I know, but this is.
I do not like it when you start speaking
And to steal
individual
Emma's-
words that we can all understand.
to steal. Yeah. So
I have to go plug it in tonight.
So to quote, I'm for the elastic trickery that's involved with this, the new program, I'm going to bet you probably when it's plugged in all the time does the cycle. It does cycle it, and then it does occasionally throw some charge at this, right? And it probably does occasionally do things that are meant to be done over the wintertime for a bike that isn't going to be touched for 90, 120 days.
So could you use a battery like that for a regular bike?
Oh
If it's got
yeah.
that much- I mean,
well,
that would
I
be
did go to Anti-Gravity's website, and they do recommend this for motorcycles up to 1,200 cc's for performance racing bikes because it's so damn light. It weighs 15 and a half ounces, and it's the size of a European pack of cigarettes. So that's pretty rad, right? And that this will throw the starter on a 1,200 cc bike and make her go boom, boom, boom all day long. That's badass. And I had some concern because this thing for a while, this NOCO booster pack, it did give me a little bit of concern because sometimes I'll be getting some shit that is like the battery's super mega dead, like cars that I know have been sitting for a year
And the LED flashes.
with the
and then
key
it-
on, with the key on or the brake lights
LED
stuck
goes
on.
like this when it's trying to
And
start it.
I hook this thing up and I plug it in and you want to put it under your armpit for a while and make sure it's good and warm before you plug it in. And you hook it up to the car and you turn the flashers on just to get that lithium good and warmed up to level. And then you're like, oh, baby, hit the key. And, they're all carbureted. So you're wailing on the accelerator pump. And you hit the key and you're just like, oh, this is going to end poorly. And you're like, fuck yeah. But then you're like, wait a second. I know this is a starter pack, but can it live as a battery?
Yeah, you're recharging it back up for the next time.
Well, but we also know with lithiums don't like being like force fucked. Like they don't like donkey punches. Lithiums don't like anger. Like lithiums like to be charged like lithiums, right? Like your voltage regulator had not. It
What
better
a kiss at the end.
you got to be gentle with lithiums. With lithiums, 14.4.
Gentle, slow pulses.
Well, if you
in and out.
Well, if I'm starting up some 26-year-old,
He's over here moving back and forth.
I'm telling you,
too.
man. If I'm starting up some ancient piece of shit with an unknown questionable voltage regulator, and I got this thing hanging in there as the only life support system where the battery used to be.
And it's a
You're going home
4-pound
that night.
pendulum going back and forth with the contact. Like,
Yes. And I'm sitting there, and I got this thing going, and I'm like, okay, well, I only got to drive at 26 miles like this, where this is my only battery. I'm expecting to see the purple flame, you know? I'm expecting what they call a thermal event.
Coronavirus.
Yeah.
I heard
Yeah.
that.
You heard that?
Do our friends from Cincinnati have anything to do with this? Since it is the NOCO genius?
Oh, you mean our friends from Northern Colorado?
No. Or is it?
Well, we met them in
they were-
Columbus.
okay.
But their podcast is the Moto Podcast, and it is NOCO Genius Boost.
Yeah, that was my whole point,
So it's
right.
super rad. But I don't know if the Pete and
So they were in
Swiggy-
okay.
Yeah, they're in Northern Colorado.
So
NOCO.
Dan was just visiting from Cincinnati and in on their podcast.
Dan
as
Hostwick
well.
is from Cincinnati.
Yeah, so he was just
Yeah.
there.
No, he's just a podcast enthusiast.
Oh.
That dude just shows up places. Like, he's a scooter guy.
Yeah, right.
And he's fucking a really fun guy to be around. I mean,
Oh,
he's
Dan's
one of my
great.
favorites.
Yeah, Dan's great.
But he is super enthusiastic about podcasts.
Yeah.
So he just like, he shows
Oh,
up.
see, I thought that
Yeah.
was his gig with those guys.
You think he's a pro gamer?
Yeah, right.
No, just an appreciator.
Oh, all right.
Yeah,
No.
that's it. Yeah, he's not. He's just a total appreciator. He's awesome. dude.
Okay.
And he does submit great shit. So anybody else got anything else?
Yeah, have you ever heard of Tuto Mondo Racing?
Tutto Mundo? So that's like what?
TMR Racing.
TMR. So like, okay, so Mundo's World, right?
Yeah.
So Tutto Mundo, what is it? Wide World Racing, yeah.
Well, these guys got bored.
And
They got bored racing rallies.
okay.
So they decided that from now on, they're going to do the Mexican 1000 on Vespas.
Yeah. I
And
guess I was.
they said there's-
You going with them?
I wish. There's not a lot of mods that you can do to a scooter. So we put knobbies, new suspension, and that's about it.
I'll donate
So
my
here,
scooter.
Phil, you're
Go
much,
Cinch, go.
Scooter. I
you're
wanna
much
see
better
it.
at figuring out what scooter that is. So
No,
what-
it's Piaggio. That's a Piaggio Typhoon.
Go Cinch,
So,
go.
yeah, it's Piaggio Typhoon with Kanabis on it.
Yeah.
And it's a primitive of enough of a Piaggio that you could have some fun with it. It's up on the big screen now. So if anybody wants to watch, this is not the first time people have taken a stab at the Baja on the wrong equipment.
I just thought it was very fitting
With the
for our
Soros
podcast. This
machine?
was something that we would
It
do.
is absolutely our friend. We were talking about Robot earlier. Robot had to fuck off into the middle of Mexico to rescue some Italians. It might even be the same team that had managed to run out of scooter, and they'd also run out of water.
Okay.
And that's a bad thing to run out of in the middle of Mexican desert.
That's
and
worse,
so
yeah.
they were in super bad fucked up shape. And Robot jumped in his car or pickup truck and hauled ass out into Mexico, and had to find these fuckers and
Wow.
rescue them.
Brought their
It may not be
corpses
these
back.
particular people. It may be somebody else, but Robot definitely has brought from the brink of death from trying to ride a Vespa across Baja. So badass. I love this. There's no way to look cool racing a Vespa. Says you.
You're right.
Says you. I think you look cooler. I think that's like
Oh, they added skid plates, shocks, and knobbies.
undercompensating. Yeah. I mean, whatever you add, that's badass. I mean, doing a Baja 1000 on a Vespa, and they're using Vespa. It's Piaggio. That's fine. And now we're not judging them harshly because it's still Billy badass. I mean, that's just as cool
I
as
like
you
how
can
they
get.
have Renthal sticking out of the top of it.
And
though.
that's because you're using a modern scooter. So because you're using a modern bike, and that actually does look like a Piaggio. I'm going to take back my statement that it's a Piaggio Typhoon. I believe that's a fucking Primavera. It is a Primavera. That is an extraordinarily modified Primavera. So yeah, that is a Vespa. I don't know what's going on in the groinal area there. There's something else happening, whether it's exhaust or what, down by his left foot.
Yeah, it seems like something's coming up and out of it there.
It's only just the basic hint of being a stock Vespa, so that's pretty rad. So I dig it. I'm totally thinking it's super cool that there's a custom built Primavera,
Right.
which is a modern Vespa you can go buy, 150cc, that's all jacked up and rigged around to be a Baja vehicle. Yeah, dude, that's the coolest thing in the world. But those are still those are 12-inch wheels.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, you
Yeah.
think about it, they got the Moto Mally guys that take care of themselves and stuff. But now
that's
you
cool.
got these dudes, you're like, you know what? I'm going on a fucking scooter.
Yeah,
That's what I'm
right
doing.
on, man. I bring the coolest thing in the world. That is hardcore as you get. Tutto Mundo. So yeah, Tutto Mundo, dude. Isn't that small world? I'm bad at the European languages at the moment. So that's it, man. That's it. Nothing else. Fucking ride fast and take chances. Press the button. You press all the buttons at the same time. Button.